Hello, everybody. Welcome to the second edition of Logistics and Technology 21 LY21, where we are proud to have managed to gather more than 300 companies registered in the sector. Well, first of all, let me introduce myself. Who am I? Well, my name is Pilar Troncoso Conlin, an Anglo-Spaniard world citizen. I'm also co-founder of Chango Tech, startup that, apart from promoting and organizing this event, has developed a technological platform that allows companies and organizations to improve the flows of information associated to the logistic processes. I'm also one of the co-founders and vice president at Oaro, a Canadian-Spanish company that offers identification and certification solutions associated to business processes, basically providing security, traceability, and efficiency in these processes. I tell you, we will hear these three attributes in this event more than once, I'm absolutely sure. So, well, as I mentioned, LYT21 is an online event organized by Chango. This event was celebrated for the first time in Spain during 2020, and due to its success and in line with the strategy of the company to expand its business in North America, we decided to replicate it here today with all of you. Our aim is to provide to all here gathered the opportunity to know firsthand real use cases that apply disruptive technologies in the logistic industry. As we are all aware, innovation and digital transformation in all organizations worldwide is a must. Those who didn't have it clear should have it now after the circumstances we are experiencing and have experienced in the last 15 months. The situation that we are living has taken us by surprise to all of us and has supposed, at least in my opinion, an awareness of our vulnerability in all aspects of our life, putting into question our routines and, of course, our economies. Therefore, innovation and innovation, digitalization and digitalization, there are no other options. The competitiveness and sustainable future of our organizations are at stake. So, as well as worrying about our income, which is extremely important, rationalization and cost reduction should be a priority. And, my dear friends, technology is one of the most important weapons or tools we have to address, that we have obviously, to address these challenges in a controlled and orderly manner. We must remember that during this past last year, inefficiencies in supply chain has been a constant. Vaccine logistics, sanitary material have been literally a pain in the neck. Brexit hasn't helped, and saturated e-commerces have been a reality. Because of all this, today we want to transmit those real cases that may help and encourage everyone to move forward in this sector that has been so punished. Well, you can use our hashtag LYT21 to help us in our social media. So, well, we want to thank all that appear in this slide who have helped us organize this event, and our speakers, and obviously the organizations that they represent, for being here with us this morning. Okay, now. So, as you can see in the following slide, we have chosen or selected 3 disruptive technologies, and the speakers will talk about real cases that are already demonstrating their benefits in regard to the improvement of processes, efficiency, safety, and many other attributes that will be coming out from these roundtables. We will finally talk about cybersecurity, a very important issue in all companies, in all sectors, and absolutely necessary to make sure we can interact with safety in this panorama we are facing. So if we have a look at the agenda in the next slide, as I said, there will be 4 roundtables. Each table will have a duration of approximately 30 to 40 minutes, in which each speaker will present their use case, and then the table will be opened for debate. So, my dear friends, let's begin our LYT 21 USA. Now, let me present the first table, which goes on about blockchain. This table will be presented and moderated by Patrick Duffy, president of BITA, which is Blockchain in Transport Alliance, a standards and advocacy organization to help educate, advocate, and establish standards for blockchain application in the transportation industry. So, Patrick, here you are. Thank you very much.
Yeah, good morning, Pilar. Thank you so much for having me. Really excited about being here. So thanks, everyone. The way that this is going to work is I've got 5 minutes to intro a topic, and then we're going to hear from 3 professionals that are operating within this space. We're going to keep the schedule tight. Each presenter has 5 minutes to present on their enterprise and what they are doing within this sector. And then we're going to host a 20-minute panel where we field some questions. There is an opportunity to provide your questions in the comments box. So please feel free to introduce the topics that are most interesting to you in your space. So without further ado, let's get started. As Pilar mentioned, I'm Patrick Duffy. I'm the president of the Blockchain and Transport Alliance. We are a global organization that started in 2017 that was really focused on the over-the-road trucking space at the time, trying to address the highly fragmented nature of that sector and the way that information flows between participants and the very different ways that certain enterprises within that sector operate. Everything from pen and paper processes and still fax machines, all the way up to large enterprises that have data science teams approaching 100 people. So it's a huge and varied space that really drives commerce. And so BITA quickly gained the attention of executives and participants from every other transport mode. And so BITA quickly grew into one of the largest alliances globally that was looking at leveraging next generation technology, including distributed ledger technology like blockchain, about how to leverage this new technology to drive efficiencies around trade. So, you know, who's really moving the needle forward? I think a lot of people have experienced some heartburn associated to their exploration of this technology. There was obviously the massive excitement and hype cycle leading up through the 2017 ICO boom. And the ICO boom also brought about some really exciting new business models that were being developed. Along with that experimentation also come failures. And I think that we're really moving into a new era of exploration of this technology beyond research and internal pilots and small networks of stakeholders as we approach enterprise grade and ecosystem level projects. I think everyone within this audience in particular would be familiar with the Trade Lens project and what that's doing within the global ocean containerized supply chain. But we're seeing these types of projects permeate throughout different layers of commerce now, whether we're talking about regulatory aspects, or we're talking about trade finance, or we're talking about the interactions between ocean carriers, port communities, drayage providers. It waterfalls throughout the entire system. And that's what I think is the promise of leveraging this type of technology. But it certainly comes with a learning curve and the need for the modification of existing processes and practices, not only within your own four walls, but really in a macro and global level sense. So I'm really excited about some of the developments we're seeing. And I'm looking forward to exploring the technology within this panel coming up. And so without further ado, I'd like to introduce our first speaker. I've actually had the opportunity to host and interact with all of our panelists this morning for the blockchain table. Our first is Isaac Kunkel. Isaac is a senior vice president at Chainyard, who is responsible for their blockchain consulting services and helps facilitate enterprises' efforts to turn blockchain into business value. Chainyard, for those not familiar, is a leader in developing blockchain-based solutions for enterprises. Chainyard helps to accelerate the blockchain infrastructure, the middleware, and the decentralized applications that enterprises need to leverage to really make this a fruitful endeavor. And so Chainyard works with multiple blockchain technologies, but has a specific focus on the Hyperledger Fabric ecosystem. And so really excited to talk with Isaac and beyond just what we're talking about within the maritime space, their work is really doing some impressive things. They recently rolled out with IBM the Trust Your Supplier network, which leverages blockchain technology to really transform supplier relationships by providing advanced insights, accelerated onboarding, and trusted exchanges of information between partners. So without further ado, Isaac, I've got to be strict on the clock, so I'm going to give you 5 minutes, and then we're going to move forward with Jordan. So take it away.
Thank you, Patrick. Thank you for that nice introduction. I will try to give you a couple minutes back. I will share with the audience that I've got a deck here, but I'm going to skip over a lot of it, but I'm happy to share with you afterwards. Patrick already introduced Chainyard. We're a technology company helping enterprises to move their digital transformation efforts forward, specific focus on decentralized ecosystems. Patrick noted that we are members of the Linux Foundation, and we are active members of both the Hyperledger and OpenIDL projects. OpenIDL was announced last week, and it's similar to many other initiatives, but it's open source and it's focused on property and casualty insurance area, specifically with facilitating regulatory reporting. It's a very innovative and unique project that is being open sourced with the key member of American Association for Insurance Services. A little bit about Chainyard. We are part of a bigger company, IT People Corporation, and we are basically the arm that delivers solutions and does advisory, engineering, operations, and we do help with consortium building as well for companies who are trying to figure out how to get started. IT People focuses on our workforce solutions area. That's the root of the company, where it started in '99 during the Y2K work. And then Trust Your Supplier. Patrick did a nice job of introducing that, and that's what I'm going to focus on today. Trust Your Supplier was rolled out in August of 2019 into production. Today, I'm happy to say we have a healthy network that's growing, and we're working to grow that network every day, and I'll give you a little bit more information about it here. So it's focused on transforming the supplier information management aspects of supply chain. This focuses on not only the logistics industry, but really it's industry agnostic. It's all supply chains and all companies who deal with outside companies, which is virtually every company in the world. And it focuses on managing the information and accelerating the onboarding process. I'm happy to say that Trust Your Supplier did win an award last year from the Blockchain Research Institute. We won the Entrepreneur Innovation Award in supply chain. Just real quickly, what pain points are we trying to solve? We're trying to solve manual work associated with redundancy, the qualification process. Obviously, like all good solutions, we're focused on reducing or eliminating operational expenses as possible. But more importantly, we are trying to ensure that there's business value for all of the participants in our Trust Your Supplier ecosystem. One other pain point that isn't really noted here is that a lot of companies are still doing supplier information management as a manual process. They initiate that usually through email with spreadsheets and Word documents. And so I'm happy to say that Trust Your Supplier is a way to digitize that process and modernize it to make it easier going forward. So who are the participants in the Trust Your Supplier network? Well, we obviously have the suppliers, and we are lucky enough to have more than 30 Fortune 500 suppliers in our network. The suppliers, we have 4,000 plus suppliers in our network. The buyers, that's where we have 30 plus Fortune 500 companies in the network. And they also, members of the supplier and buyer aspects, help manage the ecosystem and through a governance committee. And that's how we decentralize the Trust Your Supplier network. Maybe most importantly is our verifier and certificate issuers. They help bring trust into the network. Today, buyers are working with these verifiers already. We've brought in a new business model for the verifiers to work directly with suppliers, so suppliers can bring certified digital credentials into that transaction to facilitate the onboarding. We also see, as we continue to expand looking forward, auditors and additional business networks being part of Trust Your Supplier. We have about 5 networks today. We don't have any auditors specifically working directly with us. And then we also have a marketplace for third-party developers to work within this ecosystem to bring value-added offerings today focused around that onboarding process into the network. And we have more than a dozen that already have applications built, and we have really a lineup of others who are interested in bringing their solutions into it. So one of the questions we get a lot is why blockchain? And I'm sure you'll hear that, as you move forward. But we certainly could have done this as a centrally controlled solution, but then we wouldn't really be doing anything that's different than what's out there today. And so what we wanted to do was leverage the characteristics of blockchain and some of the key ones you noted here: encryption, consensus, immutability, to create trust in this new network. But maybe more importantly is now we've given the control of the underlying data that's being put into the network to the owners of that data. So suppliers own their own digital credentials, or what we call a digital passport, and buyers own their own data. And suppliers get to decide if they want to be discovered by other buyers or not, and they decide which information about their company they're going to share with the buyers and others in the network. There are certain controls around, like buyer-supplier private questions, where a buyer may have a company-specific questions that can't be secured. And so we're leveraging blockchain capabilities to enable all of that privacy and the right controls on the data. So we felt that blockchain was I apologize for that. We felt that blockchain brought these new characteristics that enabled this, and that was where the value of using blockchain for this network came from. Benefits. Obviously, having updated and timely data is always important. So we found that having this data available in real time both helped accelerate the onboarding process, but maybe more importantly, if you look at the life cycle of a supplier, it also helps us to automate a lot of the touch points that a supplier or a buyer would typically do with a supplier, whether that be quarterly, semi-annually, or annually renewals and verifications. And so we're using AI capabilities to help automate the process, but also help with the reminders. And then when data is changed in the system, for example, if a supplier changes a country of origin or where they're headquartered, we can notify the buyers and make sure that they can see that that doesn't now impact that relationship. And maybe most notably, helped him to better manage risk within their supply chain. And that's one of the major advantages of this to both buyers and suppliers. So reducing costs, speeding up onboarding, all good for the buyers. What do the suppliers get out of it? They get reduced work because now they have this digital passport. They get to share it. They can onboard in as few as a couple hours, whereas sometimes things used to take 60 days. We can't tell you where it's going to fall because every company has different qualification processes, but we have seen that metric come down, and we've seen up to 75% average reduction in onboarding, which is a benefit to suppliers because they now are getting that first revenue with the buyer quicker. And now they also have a new marketplace for their own supplies or their own wares, and they can, if they choose to be discovered by new buyers in the network. So today, TYS is in production, 30 plus global Fortune 500 buyers. It is available in 70 countries with localization and language support. And we're constantly onboarding new buyers and suppliers in the network, as well as third-party verifiers. And I just want to end on this slide by showing you that we have a nice mix of companies representing, mostly global companies representing many industries. And this was a strategy to go wide on industries and try to work on creating standards for what that supplier information management and onboarding process looks like across these industries. And I thank all of our governance board members who are active participants in helping us to drive this solution forward and making it what it is today. All right, that's all I have for now, Patrick. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Isaac. I think this is really, this slide in particular is indicative of the movement towards ecosystem level projects. You called out 70 different countries being represented, and the names of the companies across those slides. Those are the companies that not only live in our homes, but also provide those things that end up being delivered to our homes, oftentimes multiple times a day now. So without further ado, we're going to introduce Jordan Sorensen. Jordan's the co-founder and CTO of Chango Tech and a blockchain and big data enthusiast. Jordan went to IE Business School, where he actually met his future co-founder, Andreas, and eventually started Chango Tech. And while the company is based in Spain, Jordan's basically been back in Virginia helping to promote the entry into the US market for the company. Really excited to have Jordan with us today, and so much thanks to Jordan and the Chango team for putting together this awesome event. As Pilar mentioned, Chango Tech is a startup that really is aiming to solve the documentation delays and other associated problems around the digitization of documentation that is all around trade and the verified transactions of those documents that needs to happen to facilitate trade. So Jordan, take it away. You got 5 minutes.
Perfect. Hey, I appreciate it. No, it's great to be here with everybody. Really excited to see this kind of entire event unfold. And as Patrick was talking, here at Chango Tech, we're really focused on very isolated issues inside of global supply chain and through the shipping process itself. So brief overview of the company. As was stated, we started at IE Business School, and everything's kind of evolved out from there. Now we're about 4 years existing as a company and thriving and scaling where we currently are. We have current clients and use cases in a variety of different areas inside of different aspects of supply chain and logistics, with our overall goal really providing solutions to the logistic industry that are combining the digitization of kind of the future and blockchain technology to really further that digitization process. We found quite a few people in the process itself. Stage one is digitizing a kind of antiquated shipping and global trade process and taking it kind of to that new century that we're really in. Now, some of the reasons that we've particularly identified this area is looking through a traditional route of shipping. You go from point A all the way to point B, and we've identified several very clear breaking points where there just tends to be more and more issues with documentation or with data being incorrect or human error or whatever it might be. And all of these issues lead to costs, directly to economic impact for shippers and for exporters, importers, and people involved in the process. In fact, so much so that oftentimes these costs are kind of baked into the cake. You go into it knowing, okay, we're probably going to have to spend a little bit extra per container for assumed errors in the process. And we identified that quickly as something that we can solve and help, particularly with Chango Freight itself. Now, Chango Freight is a specific product inside of the Chango platform And Chango Freight's a standalone web platform with complete end-to-end cargo management focused on the electronic documentation, signing documents, track and trace, having that full blockchain auditing behind the scenes, so we're sure that documents are the original authentic document and being signed and tracked properly. It's a collaborative platform, and where we have quite a few clients existing today and seeing a great efficiency in that process. Additionally, we have customized platforms that are tailored specifically to the needs of individual clients and their unique use cases or business practices. And then as well, we offer integrated services directly into the existing web platforms that are out there. Now, why blockchain technology? And to mirror some of what Isaac said, this is such a good question, because in 2017 in particular, it was kind of a technology that came out that was so exciting. It was almost, hey, we got this great technology, let's go find a problem to throw at it. And that it worked to really explore and find a lot of things that were great, and maybe some things that didn't actually need that technology itself to operate at full functionality. And we've really tried to flip that script and find the problems in the industry and find the right technological solution. In this case, oftentimes we find to be blockchain. And the main reason, the number one reason, although there are others outside of this for sure, that we look at blockchain technology is providing not just the verified transactions, transparency, and timestamped events, but to ultimately bring us to immutability. Our clients want to know that the information that they're putting into the process, whether that be data or whether that be documentation, is the original, authentic, unmodified. They can trust that this is the document as it was intended to be. That immutable side of it is the core competency that our clients are looking for. Now, for that, Chango Freight itself is aimed at being an agnostic solution that we adjust with the needs of our clients themselves, operating inside of the Hyperledger sector, or we can do Ethereum or the mini forks of Ethereum, using kind of that same code base itself, side chains and different specific blockchain solutions to meet the needs of our individual clients themselves. Now, the functionalities of our platform itself is obviously blockchain, which I've already spoken about, process automation, a full API suite to operate inside of the platform, as well as integrate into other services. OCR document processing we found to be extremely useful when helping to eliminate human error in the process, and ERP integrations for various systems out there. Now, specific use cases that we've worked on, freight forwarder that we've worked with from the beginning, pretty much. Codex Logistics went from 8 orders per employee that they could process to 18 orders per employee. You saw a vast increase in their efficiency in the entire process itself. And then with an international exporter, Mau San Miguel, one of the largest exporters from Spain, had a total lead time in their process from 1 week cut down to less than a day, working through our platform itself and the ways that we can really speed up with the process automation and being able to collaborate more efficiently with the people involved. We've done additional use cases for more of the customized solutions for individual shipper through Volans, manufacturer Athedinox, and then Supplier in Tonewoods, each one with its unique aspects and full branding for those companies, kind of a unique standalone platform for them that they're already seeing success in improving their entire process through. Now, just to wrap things up here, the company itself started out with just Andres, myself, and Pilar, and we've grown to a full team, and we are in the process of, we just finished closing a seed round of funding. We are scaling from here. As was previously mentioned, the company is founded in Madrid, where we both went to business school, Andres and I, and then I've moved to the United States. I'm obviously from the United States, and but a big portion of that is to start the market entry into the U.S. side of things. We've been a member of the Virginia Maritime Association for some time now, as well as BIDA and other organizations, and starting to promote what it is that we can offer to this industry right now at this time. So this is a bit about ourselves as a company, a bit about myself. I'm looking forward to the panel discussion. Thank you, Patrick.
Thanks so much, Jordan. Really excited to see the company develop. Excitingly, I know you guys just recently closed a seed round, so I'm excited to see how the company continues to grow and push these products out into the marketplace. Coming up now is one of my favorite people within this sector. I am consistently impressed and excited by the innovation and insights from almost every conversation myself and Rajat have. Rajat's the co-founder of Dex Freight, where he helps lead the development of machine learning tools, a decentralized logistics protocol, and other special projects. Rajat's also been Rajat and the Dex Freight team have been meaningful contributors to the BITA standards development efforts. Dex Freight was one of the first companies to actually leverage our first standard around location within their work. And Rajat also helps to lead some very exciting projects over at MOBI, the Mobility Open Blockchain Initiative, where he has helped to really push forward specifications around vehicle identity, which is kind of like a birth certificate for an asset, which I think has implications well beyond just the automotive space. And also their supply chain working group. Rajat comes to this with more than a decade of experience as a research scientist, and also holds a doctorate degree in transportation. So he knows what he's talking about. And so I'm really excited to have you here, Rajat. Let's start the clock and share your insights. Rajat, it looks like you're on mute. If you can.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I was on mute.
There we go.
Thank you for the intro, Patrick. Yeah, you're one of my favorite people to work with as well. So it goes both ways. Again, thank you for the opportunity to present today. And happy to be here. So I'm going to share my screen. We're Dex Freight, and we founded the company around 2018 as a way to leverage the blockchain technology in logistics, mostly ground freight, to improve the workflow of brokers, shippers, and carriers with regards to movement of ground shipment and drayage. So our mission is to simplify logistics with a decentralized fintech-enabled market network for freight companies. Dex Freight essentially is a marketplace as well as a middleware for brokers, shippers, and carriers with their ERP and TMS systems. We have a unique blend of expertise in the team. We have people who have spent 30-something years in logistics sector and technology development, as well as blockchain protocols and DeFi. So essentially, Dex Freight Inc. has a couple of tools that we've developed over the past couple of years. The first one is the marketplace and middleware. It's a standalone web app and a middleware for brokers and carriers, providing cross-company workflow automation and settlement layer. So that's where we use smart contract. I'll talk about that.
I don't mean to interrupt. Actually, I do mean to interrupt. Can you push share your screen? We're not being able to see your presentation, and I know we want to see it.
Okay, hold on. Okay. How about now?
I don't currently see it, but if we can figure it out, no worries. But let's just push forward.
Okay. So we have the standalone web app and the middleware for the brokers and carriers, as well as shippers. We have a mobile app which triggers the automated workflow for the drivers as they pick up and deliver shipments. And all of those shipment events are sent to the smart contract, and all the parties have to sign cryptographically the transaction as well as other documents. We also have two other tools that help with the workflow automation, like shipment selection and rate prediction, as well as tour generation that extensively use machine learning, which is one of our core competencies here. And one of the key things that is very exciting for us is the use of blockchain technology. So every shipment has a smart contract associated with it. So we use the smart contract to automate the execution of payment once the carrier has delivered the shipment. And both parties are also able to see the shipment events in the blockchain as well. We use Ethereum, Rinkeby at this point. We're also using the side chain, which is the RSK that sits on top of Bitcoin. One of the very interesting things that we are working is we're actually developed this, and it's ongoing, is the use of those smart contracts to do three very important things. One is the proof of shipment events. We also do invoice-less payment. That means there's no paper invoice involved, since all the transaction events happen in the platform. That allows us, because those shipment events are in smart contracts, that allows us to create non-fungible tokens. I know NFTs has been quite a buzz these days. So because that invoice is essentially a digital asset that sits in blockchain, we're able to create a non-fungible token. We work with Chainlink and MakerDAO and some other very innovative blockchain companies to make that happen. So once that NFT is created, we can do very innovative things, such as combining several NFTs and creating a new NFT. We're also able to do low-cost borrowing against those NFTs as a collateral. So one last thing that I would mention here is the platform is open to all third-party TMS and fleet management systems if they want to take advantage of these tools. So we also do, because we're able to convert those invoices to an NFT. We, like I mentioned, we're able to borrow against those NFT for almost like a factoring at a much lower cost, because we don't have that much paperwork involved. So I'll just close by saying two things. One is, our goal is very clear. It's the convergence of three things. One is public blockchain, which will take a role of a common ledger for the industry. The second is the smart contract, which works like an executioner, and then the machine learning, which works like a process learner. So obviously the human operator always sits on the top. So our goal is to converge those three technologies to essentially reduce the cost of processing those shipments, whether it's a full truckload or dredge or air or rail freight. So just in closing, we have about 2,500 customers in our list. Majority of them have already moved shipments using the platform, and we're continuously adding more and more carriers and brokers into the system. So with that, I'll close my initial statement. Thank you, Patrick.
Oh, Patrick, I think you're on mute.
I'm sorry, you guys just missed the most insightful 30 seconds. The realities of doing these things in 2021, it is constantly laughable events coming out of these things. So bear with me. I appreciate it. What I was making a comment around was how Rajat was talking about the convergence of these three different technologies within the blockchain or DLT space and how it's related to trade. But as we step back and kind of thinking about, the logistics and transportation event, OIT 21, that we've got everyone gathered here today around, it's really, I think, this exciting moment where you see the maturation of a number of these technologies coming together to address pain points that have existed in some cases for decades or longer, centuries, in terms of talking about the challenges of trade documentation. And I often think about kind of three technologies as kind of the trinity of logistics, supply chain, and transportation technologies, and that's sensor tech, broadly IoT, machine learning and AI kind of combined, and blockchain as the plumbing or the infrastructure that's going to allow for the high fidelity transference of those datas between where the data is being captured, where the data is being thrown off, and how to transport that data between different stakeholders in a permissioned way. And so I'm really excited about being able to ask you three professionals about where y'all feel we actually are. As I mentioned in my intro, the audience, in speaking again broadly, has seen the evolution of technology for the ocean and containerized ocean in particular space, from mainframes and EDI and telephone and pen and paper, all the way to these exciting technologies, which for some operators still are a bit over the horizon, but are increasingly seen as core components of global enterprises' development of their modern and next generation technology stacks. So, I guess I will push this out to Isaac first because of y'all's position as a facilitator of this technology. How has the conversation changed over the past 3 years, Isaac? Are the questions that y'all are receiving from C-suite decision makers, are they changing? Are they the same questions? Where do you feel like we are on the spectrum versus 3 years ago?
Thank you, Patrick. Well, we're definitely further along, right? Because there's been a lot of education that's gone on with it. But I would say that every company and every industry is in a different state, and it really depends on where they see the business value coming. So it's still possible to get questions about the technology itself, whereas today, whereas 3 years ago that was predominant, right? 3 years ago we were doing POCs and proving the technology worked. Today we're well beyond this. If anybody's out in the audience, the technology works. There's lots of proof points there. We're now focused on business value, and I think that's probably the biggest thing. But the short answer to your question is it just varies. It varies by company and individual, but there's definitely been a lot of education. So it's more about the value and less about the technology.
Thank you. And Rajat or Jordan, do y'all want to weigh in on that? Both of y'all have also been working in this for an extended period now, and certainly have your own anecdotes about conversations with decision makers. Rajat, do you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, we're certainly past the hype cycle, right? So I think that hump was around 2019, 20, and certainly Isaac mentioned the vast amount of education that has happened already. So the executives are now asking about, okay, can we scale these things or not? Right? Is there if when you talk about scaling, it obviously comes with the business value and financial benefits and all that. So now it's on us to prove that the technology not only works, but it also does what we've always been claiming, which is the efficiency gains, and requiring less amount of trust. And I think there was a paper published several years ago about what is the cost of trust, and I think it's about 5% of the GDP. So if you translate that,
billions of dollars.
Exactly.
It's a fantastic piece of research. I know what you're talking about.
So since we've been saying, blockchain will decentralize the trust or reduce the cost of trust, then that's what we need to prove. Can we bring down that from 5% to 4%? And what will that do to the industry in general? Is where we are right now.
I'd say to add my thoughts on it, we've completely changed even just our terminology in approaching projects. If we're working with a newer company that's starting out technology, we no longer refer to things as a proof of concept, as that's something I think as both my other panelists have highlighted, we're kind of beyond. We consider this a pure proof of value. We know the technology works, we know how it works, we know how it can benefit these companies. And we think the evidence is borne out clearly in the projects. Now it's showing that value so they really understand not just what the technology is doing, but how it can long-term scale and benefit their company inside of their specific use cases there. So that's the important thing that we've really seen on our side.
Can I ask a quick, less than 30-second question to each one of y'all? Do y'all feel that the terminology around this this technology, let's call it blockchain and consortia, is the terminology or the glossary of terms a problem? Does blockchain need a rebrand?
I think I'll go first, I guess. From my perspective, the enterprise side of it, I don't really think so. I think the enterprise side of things is pretty centered where it needs to be. The only problem is the encroachment of kind of the investment coin side, which is, don't get me wrong, has its own merits and there's a lot of strengths there. But when you've got these coins and things that just sound ridiculous to a layman, to a regular person, it kind of bleeds over and can, I don't know, take down the notch of professionalism that the actual enterprise side of blockchain actually is. So I think there's definitely a reckoning between balancing the guy on the internet that's making a coin for fun and the actual real world business applications that we're applying to benefit companies around the world.
One of my favorite commentators within this space broadly is Joe Weisenthal at Bloomberg, and talking about the Coinbase IPO over the past week or direct listing. He brought up the fact that he actually created his own coin about 2 years ago. And if he had just listed it on one of these, DeFi platforms, what would be the market cap of that coin that he could be extracting out on one of these DeFi platforms and, yield farming. So I totally get that point. Rajat, do you want to weigh in?
Yeah, so I wouldn't change the name, right? It is what it is. But I think there's a bit of a confusion between the whole jargon of DLT versus blockchain. Are they the same or are they different? And people have different views, one for the other. But I don't think it's important for practitioners like me. But what is also important is the fact that people are now more and more okay with the idea of cryptocurrency in general and tokens and as well. You won't believe it that we had a couple of carriers call us and ask that, hey, can I get paid in Bitcoin? It's like, no, not yet. And we have carriers who are familiar with blockchain technology, because there's what we're seeing in the past couple of years is more and more younger generation is taking over the industry, and they're familiar with all the new technologies, including blockchain, and they're not intimidated by it. the way the previous generation probably is.
So
so we're seeing that
broadly
change.
no.
Right.
Okay. Isaac, what about you?
I agree with both of them. I don't think it needs a new dictionary of terms. I'm not even sure how you would do that. You might make it even more confusing. But I do think it's all starts with understanding all the variations we're talking about. Public, private, hybrid, consortiums, all of those things. And it's really education and understanding where the value is going to come from once you understand what the technology can do.
Awesome. So, we're bumping up against time. We've got about 5 minutes left. Maritime innovation broadly in blockchain certainly seem like a great match. The unprecedented nature of the global challenges related to COVID over the past 14 months have brought about an unprecedented visibility to the supply chain visibility challenges that affect global trade. I think the supply chain visibility used to be a term that was so niche, and everyone from their couches really started to experience the need for supply chain visibility when they started to run into consumer challenges, whether it was toilet paper or whether it's around PPE. And now we're talking about the distribution challenges associated to the vaccine rollouts. Do y'all feel like the United States is leading the charge? Do you feel like the United States is falling behind? We're seeing some really exciting projects in Singapore and the Netherlands where they're leveraging the United Nations Commission on International Trade Laws, this new model law around the adoption of electronic tools for trade transactions. Is the U.S. falling behind against these other competitors? China seems to certainly be taking a proactive stance on this technology. What would you recommend if you guys had the ear of regulators and port authority officials to say, this is what we really need to do to allow for the United States to be the leader in this space? Jordan, you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. Broadly speaking, from my experience, I would probably say that the United States as a whole is a little bit behind. I see a lot more going on from the government, the regulatory side of things, in the EU, in other areas of the world, where the United States is still trying to figure out what's a security versus what's a token in some aspects. Although I do think that there's some catching up and advancement, and there are, I would like to think, several companies well represented here that are really pushing the right buttons to move things forward. Overall, I would definitely say that the U.S. has some catching up to do in that adoption side. And if I could recommend one thing to a lot of the regulatory bodies, or really, I think a lot of this would come down to port authorities and the various ports that are involved, is it's time to move past the talking stage and start finding ways to implement this technology, even if in a small bit right now, to see where that value really is. Because the sooner we can get the broader scope of the logistics industry, the infrastructure in the United States kind of on board, the faster we can integrate into networks like Trustee Supplier and what Raj is doing, and obviously what we're doing here at Chango. I think that really accelerates not just the use for individuals, those port or the authorities, but the global supply chain itself, accelerating a lot of the inefficiencies that we currently see.
Great takeaway, Jordan. Rajat, at Dex Freight, you all have been working with port authority communities or port community systems in different countries, different jurisdictions. What's your take on it?
I'm going to disagree a little bit on that. In terms of the technology development itself, I think U.S. has the most number of developers contributing to the overall ecosystem. Yes, from the regulatory side about token issuance, we're certainly behind, and there's some light at the end of the tunnel. We saw the opinion piece from one of the commissioners that just came out about allowing token issuance with the time constraint. That's certainly interesting. In terms of actual deployment at the enterprise level, I mean, it's still, you have to understand that there are regulatory issues related to antitrust, and that keeps a lot of these big companies, Fortune 500, 100 companies and publicly traded companies, to be a little bit more careful as to what data can be shared and what data cannot be shared. And what goes into the blockchain and what doesn't go into the blockchain. So they have to be a little more careful compared to, let's say, perhaps in Asian countries, right, where the antitrust may not be viewed so strongly. So there's also, Europe is very heavy on the GDPR, and there's also questions about identity. There's some projects that are coming out of Europe.
I'm getting the time hook. So
okay. Let
me jump to Isaac real quick. Isaac, let's get your feedback.
Sure. I think both Jordan and Rajat are right. Public, we are not the leaders in the U.S. Private, I'd say we are, if not the leaders, we are right up there. But I do think the government's trying to come. There's definitely been a lot in the DeFi world and the Treasury looking at these things. But I don't think we're leading in that area. But hopefully we can play catch up and not come back to be leadership on the public sector as well.
So what I'm hearing is the promise and the foundation exist. We'll have to see how we execute against it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So thank you all so much for this exciting discussion. We got a number of questions which we weren't able to get to. I'm going to encourage the panelists to try to address those offline, and we're going to move forward with the day's events. There's a lot more in store. Look forward to hearing all these insights, and thanks everybody for tuning in with us.
Thanks, Patrick.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Patrick.
Well, thank you very much, Blockchain Roundtable. Fascinating on this fascinating technology, obviously. Now, well, we're going to the next roundtable, which is the IoT. This table is led by Jerry Cronin. Jerry, Director at OpenSea's Technology Innovation Hub, that seeks to identify wicked and intractable problems and solutions in the areas of maritime, offshore wind, agriculture, flooding, and coastal resilience. He's also director of Tempo Program, the general consulting arm of Old Dominion University's Institute for Innovation and Entrepreneurship. So there I leave you in the IoT Roundtable. Thank you very much.
Fantastic. I assume it's over to me right now. Good to meet everybody. As Pilar said, I am the executive director of the OpenSea's Technology Innovation Hub, and I have the pleasure of working with startups and companies and governments and organizations all around, trying to solve problems and then following up on that, building businesses out of them. And logistics happens to be one of the pillars of what we do. We're located in a major U.S. port city, so we're a bright node in the world's global network of trade. So all these issues are extremely important. IoT to me is a very, very exciting thing. It's sort of the natural culmination of, you now have persistent communications, which are getting more pervasive by the day. You've got great sensors, you've got great control systems, analytics are getting, more powerful, and then throw AI and machine learning on top of all that, and you've got sort of a perfect storm of opportunity to make things a lot better. So I'm excited to hear from the three folks we have in the panel today. We've got two from the kind of the solution provider side, Javier Ferrer, who's the CEO and co-founder of YTrack, and he'll introduce himself. And we also have David Perron, who's the CEO of Barbara IoT. On the company side, Andres Arguello, and he is the head of distribution and depots for Seor. So we get to hear sort of on both sides, the practitioner and the folks who are looking to build greater value by using IoT. So with that in mind, I don't see Javier or Andres or David online yet. There's Javier. There's Javier. Hello, senor. How you doing?
Hi, how are you, everyone?
I'm doing very, very well. So you've got 5 minutes to tell us about yourself and what you guys are doing, and then we'll end this whole thing with a sort of a roundtable discussion. So please.
Okay, great. I start. I'm just starting to share my screen. Can you see it? Okay, perfect. Great. Hi, nice to meet you. I'm Javier Ferrer, the CEO and founder of Ytrack, the new way of doing control tower tools for the supply chains of the future. Basically, my objective now in these 5 minutes is to explain how the industry is becoming Industry 4.0 in the whole value chain, not only in the supply chain. In Ytrack, basically, we put eyes and brains to the assets due to the IoT technology and combining also AI and other superpower tools. We are a worldwide technological vendor playing in automotive, food, maritime, and other sectors where logistics need superpowers of track and trace, okay? My objective is to show you how we can locate and monitor anything, anywhere, on real time, wirelessly to the world, okay? Basically, I'm going just to put a fast video of less than a minute to explain you that how the maritime corporates are measuring and controlling on real time and wirelessly their reefers, their vessels, their cargo assets, thanks to combining IoT technologies like ICE, satellite, LoRa, even cellular or Sigfox or Narrowband IoT or 5G, in order to provide on real-time tracking and heat control of the vessels. Due to that, food corporates or even pharma corporates are tracking on real-time their assets in the sea, in the air, worldwide. In parallel, when you see how a logistic company can measure like a heart that is pulsing like a pulse, here you can see how 20 million of pallets on real time are saying to the supply chain manager of a company, how is the tomato, how is the pineapple, how is the asset on real time wirelessly. Due to that, the value chain, in this case, in Ytrack, we said that any value chain has 3 layers, 3 levels. The infrastructure, the core or the AI algorithm where the magic appear, and the platform when you can track and trace and visualize any asset on real time. Just to show you some different use cases, as we have seen in the video, okay? Here, this is just a simple sample as when you are tracking on real time your fleet movements, but also it's really important to understand what is happening with the fleet, with the supermarket, or so on. In this case, this use case, one of the big food retailers in Europe, they have a revenue of 25 billion of euros. They are tracking the fleet, they are tracking their warehouses, they are tracking their retailer points, as you can see here, not only in Spain or in Europe, worldwide, okay? In this case, in all the country, in real time, wirelessly, and say, okay, this is a technology for big players, it's not needed. The payback of this type of projects is in less than 3 months. Yes, 3 months. After 3 months, you have the benefits. If you have a CapEx way of thinking, you have a OpEx way of thinking, you have benefits the first day of these implementations. when you are tracking forklifts, people, assets in indoor, you can save lives, you can save supply chains or service level agreement, and nowadays you don't have to deploy infrastructure. Due to that, sorry because it's in Spanish, this use case of carretillas is forklifts. You can see, you can track on real-time wirelessly by doing geofencing any type of assets on real-time. Just to finish my part, just the simple message, with IoT technologies, any logistic company, any logistic supply chain can track and trace anything, anywhere, on real time and with superpowers of AI. It will be a pleasure after to solve any question. Thank you for these 5 minutes. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Javier. Appreciate it. I'm looking forward to the roundtable portion of the discussion. Now let's move to Andres Aguayo, who's the head of distribution and depots for COR. So, Andres, please take it away.
Hi, thanks Jerry for the introduction, for introducing myself. Hey everyone, and thanks all the rest of the organization for inviting me to this workshop. It is an honor to be here to present the case of use of the IoT in Seoul. Well, first of all, let me share the presentation. Did you see now? Okay. Well, first of all, before we start talking, we start talking about the case of use of the IoT. I want to introduce Seoul as the leader company of transport here in Spain, with almost 80 years of experience, leading the field in 3 main business areas. International, we are part of TPD Group with presence in all Europe, being the #1 transport company here. E-commerce, we work very closely with our e-commerce customer, representing a big share in our business. B2B, we are specialists in B2B services, being a key for our customer. As you can see, so it's a big company into a big network, as you can see at the numbers. For example, 100 million parcels delivered in 2020. Then, and then you are wondering how we apply the IoT into our supply chain. Let me introduce the case of use quickly before we speak about the IoT network. We use IoT into our fresh and food services. Our fresh and food services, called here in Spain, Seu Frio, it is a high-quality end-to-end services designed to transport parcels between 2 and 8 Celsius degree into a controlled way. We usually transport meat, fish, and seafoods, dairy products, and gourmet products, always with the commitment with our customers to keep cold chain between 2 and 8 Celsius degree. And then the main goal of Seu Frio is to offer the end-to-end traceability of temperature and the process of their processes. Well, how do we do? That's the question to answer here. To keep core of customer passes, we have an adapted network to operate with the requirements of the service and to keep end-to-end traceability. We have 300 last mile vans, 700 delivery containers, 150 line haul trucks, 200 line haul containers, and also 100 cold rooms in all depots. Well, it's okay. It's okay. We have a lot of parcels, and we have a lot of vans, trucks, cold rooms, but the most important thing is to keep the parcel cold and register them. How do we do to register the temperature? Easy, no? Using the IoT technology in that case. We have almost 1,500 IoT devices in our network. These devices are connected to a local partner network, and we record all the registers into a cloud database, as you can see in these slides. Thanks to the integration via API, we could relate the temperature with our operative scan each 50 minutes only. So we can relate the process with the IoT, thanks to the total coverage here in Spain, because all the vans, trucks, call rooms, and I have a device installed inside. Well, we have the fresh and food service implement, the infrastructure to implement, and also the technology implement. Then what about the result of this solution? Thanks to the IoT, we have real-time monitoring and all the processes and temperature of all parcels controlled. For example, here we have the KPIs of temperature of one Seur depot. We have the maximum temperature, the average temperature in this day, and the minimum, and also the alerts of the temperature of the infrastructure. This information we serve to our customers to guarantee the cold chain of their parcels, and that's the benefit of this. Well, that's all from my side in this 5 minutes. I hope you enjoy the case of use of the IoT technology here in Seur, and that's the Seur Frio solution. Hope you enjoy.
Thanks, Andres. That was very informative, and I'm looking forward to the discussion. Last up, we have David Peron, and he's with Barbara IoT. So over to you, sir.
Thanks, Jerry, and thanks the previous speakers for their great presentations, and thanks everybody for listening to me. So let me share my screen and present what we do in Barbara IoT and how we think the IoT is disrupting the logistics market. So first of all, who we are, Barbara, we are experts in industrial IoT connectivity and secure edge computing. So I think what the previous speakers was great. I think we do very similar things, but we have a very core focus on security for critical applications and edge computing. And I will explain to you what is this. What are the IoT challenges when it comes to logistics? The first one is connectivity. As Javier explained, connecting all over the world is very complex. There's a ton of different technologies, LoRa, 5G, NB-IoT, Wi-Fi, short-range connectivities, and it's very complex to understand what is better for any case and support all of them. The second one is scalability. So it's easy to do a POC, a proof of concept with one device, but how do you scale to millions of devices? And third, and last but not least, cybersecurity. When you talk about critical assets, and I will put you some examples, cybersecurity can be a critical need. So what we do with our product is Barbara OS is deploying edge nodes similar like this, which provides, first of all, connectivity to sensors and actuators, intelligence in the edge. So we are able to provide artificial intelligence, but not in the cloud, because the sensors may not have connectivity always, and there may be cost problems. So we can provide artificial intelligence in the edge. We can remotely manage the life cycle of millions of devices, so activate them, deactivate them. And again, last but not least, we protect all the deployments, all the sensors, all the actuators, and furthermore, all the information cybersecurely from the edge. So we are in many industries. We are a cross-industry platform, but today we're here to talk about logistics, where we have customers like Dia Supermarket, one of the biggest supermarket chains all over the world. But I want you to present a use case when security makes sense, which is critical inventory management. So we do have a use case with the fire department here of a region in Spain, and we are putting these edge nodes in their trucks to do real-time inventory management. So obviously, since this is a critical service, it is subject to be hacked and to be attacked by cyber criminals. So this is why the fire department trusted in Barbara, because we can connect the inventory in real time, but without any risk. So basically doing this and using IoT here, I would always say that the IoT for logistics has three key impacts on any company. First of all, it can reduce effort by providing real-time inventory analysis. It can reduce mistakes by doing a completely digital and automated inventory, and this, when the fire department is going to an emergency, this is critical, reduce mistakes. And in the case of Barbara, we are always reducing risk because our edge nodes are secure by design, and it can provide all the information in real time, anywhere, anytime, but also completely encrypted and securing all the assets and all the things that these sensors and actuators are connected to. So thanks a lot, and I'm really looking forward to the panel.
Thank you, David. And now we'll be joined by our two other panelists. And thank you, gentlemen, for participating. I'm going to start off with a question to Andres. And that's, where have you seen the greatest value or impact that resulting from having implemented IoT?
Well, that's a good question, Jerry. Thanks, IoT, we could guarantee the cold chain and the possibility to offer to our customers the traceability of the temperature of the parcel, for example. And that valuing increase the service level and increase also the revenue into our company. That's information to improve the processes also, for example.
Yeah, great example. Javier, I'd ask you the same question. You're not implementing it at your company, I would assume, but you've done implementations for other companies. If you were looking at all your implementations, where was that wow return on investment that you might have seen?
Great question. And when I speaking with my clients like Ford Motor Company, Volkswagen Group, Nissan, Mercadona, Carrefour, so great corporates from food, logistics, and so on, the first benefit is the economics. When one client saved $20 million in less than 6 months, spending less than 100K, so the ROI or payback was super sexy. Okay, another client saved $5 million in less than a month. So basically, the first is economics.
Yes.
It's interesting. The second, but for me is really, really important, according to a serious corporate or company, is the digital automatic compliance. Thanks to the IoT, you can have digital insurance, digital compliance, digital reporting on real time. Basically, in order to have great decisions, you need data, qualified data. Thanks to the IoT, you have the data and brains in the assets, the physical assets. So if you combine economics and compliance or fast decisions, the magic appears. So, and now in the pandemic and before in the pandemic, the supply chains were blind. They didn't have data. Now, data is rubbish. It's knowledge. It's the new petrol or the new goal of this age is the qualified data. We call insights or qualified insights. Okay.
Mm-hmm. So you say 20 million. So where did that 20 million come from? Was something
in this specific case by reducing stocks and scraps. Okay. When you are an important tier one from automotive sector and you have a lot of spare parts or warehouses and so on, the problem is that if you don't have data of your physical assets, you have over stocks on over funding in your supply chains. Okay. The other was one client that saved 5 million was two manual operations that thanks to the IoT, you can know now when you provide cool track and trace for a tomato or from this is the Bexen medical pallets, they move vaccines, AstraZeneca, Johnson Control, so on. They lost vaccines a few months ago. Yes, some important assets. Now, a medical and pharma, they don't lose anything because they can, with a simple device or an active simple tracker, they can have this data to save life. So this data transformative in insight is the new goal, is the new petrol of this industry 4.0.
Great. How about you, Duffy? Where would you say, from your experience, the greatest value, a wow story?
I fully agree with Javier. I think it's all about economics. And for example, if one of our customers, the main problem with logistics is that many times there are a lot of manual processes and people is paid by productivity. So that means that people goes very fast trying to do their work, and we're humans and they have a lot of errors. So by implementing our IoT technology in warehouses, one of our customers reduced by 30%, 30, the errors performed in their logistics chain. So that means 30% less returns, less complaints, and at the end of the day, 30% more benefits. So yeah, it's directly related to economics. I fully agree.
Great.
Yeah. I agree with my colleagues. It is true that if you implement the IoT technology, your warehouses and you have the possibility to audit and to control your internal processes. And if you control your internal processes, you have the opportunity to improve that. And that's a way to keep improving your company and your processes. And that's a good value of the IoT.
Javier.
I want to complement, because I absolutely agree with David and with Andre. One pallet customer say that thanks to us or thanks to the IoT, they can offer new services to the world. So pallet as a service, container as a service, even a machine as a service. So the IoT provides new services, new challenges in order to provide more, not only user experience to the employees, to the customers. You can do an automatic preventing pallet to avoid to be steal, or to provide a one-way or circular supply chain to the logistics. So when you are seeing Amazon supply chain, Walmart supply chain, Tesco supply chain, now it's not only transport tomatoes, it's to provide more insights and even more services due to this insight. So that's like, it's not magic, it's technology, but really helpful for new functionalities, new services.
Yeah, David, I'd ask, when you're doing these things, what's the hard part? I mean, it magically does not come right out of the box and everything's working. Having done large systems implementations in the past, there's always those. What's the hard part?
Well, I will say, at least in our case, as I said during my presentation, the hard part is scalability. Many people is doing POCs with their engineering R&D departments, and it works perfectly when it is in the lab for one device, 2 devices, 3 devices. But when they go and start putting more and more devices in the network, there are many problems. How do you manage all the devices remotely? How do you update the firmware? How do you, secure those devices? Because that's, again, it's a very challenging thing deploying security. It's very simple to provide security in an IT control room, but when you have millions of devices outside, how do you do it? So all these problems comes when you go out from a POC, from a proof of concept. So for me, doing POCs, proof of concept, may be simple, but many projects fail. Actually, Cisco said that 3 of each 4 projects of IoT fail in the scalability phase. So for me, this is the challenging thing.
I'd say, Andres, on the on the customer side, what was hard for you guys? What would you say? Hey, be careful about these things.
I agree with David. I think that the process and the government, the process and the governance of all the process, the governance of all the devices, the change of the batteries, for example, it is a big problem when you have to change in these batteries, for example, and it is a problem too, because we can lose the devices. No, if you are thinking of all the government of this management, it is a difficult way to government or very, very good. And that's the key if you want to go out for a proof of concept to get all your network implemented with IoT.
Javier, over to you. What's hard?
My feelings, or white track insights, good and bad news. The technology and the processes is, for us at least, is not the challenge. We are tracking more than 50 million assets worldwide from Valencia. So it's not the main challenge I found in super huge corporates is the human beings mindset. Sometimes change the way of thinking of a corporate is hard. So the good point, technology is easy to adapt, is easy to protect, and easy to make within a process. The corporate have a lot of processes, a lot of bureaucracy. In Spain, we say burocracia, okay? Right? Because it's too many bullshit that not is providing that value to the world. And the technology allows to automatic most of these rubbish things. But the problems sometimes happen in the human brain. They think, I don't understand. So sometimes the IoT vendors or manufacturers are like evangelists. We need to democratize the use of technology because any one of us doesn't have a mobile, doesn't have an espresso or a super deep technology in their house. They don't are comfortable using the same technology at the industry. Why? It's stupid. You can track and trace vaccines to save lives in a really, really cheap or cost competitive way. So the problem, from at least for us, that I insist that we are tracking millions of assets for super corporates, is the mindset of the work team, the client, the provider, the ecosystem within the project. Sometimes it's like Melrose Place, all season that was too much noise, but it's not so difficult if the people align their expectations.
Thanks. David, I want to follow up on and tease out something that Javier was saying, and you said earlier. You mentioned Cisco said 3 out of 4 of their projects failed, and Javier was speaking to, ensuring that you're returning value, because companies only do things that return value. What do you need to do to ensure that there's a return on investment?
Well, I think what you need to do to ensure that there is a proper ROI is to address certain problems from the very beginning, from the design phase. So one of the problems that sometimes comes after the design phase is, for example, cybersecurity. And there are many companies that when they want to put cybersecurity at the middle of the project, it costs much more, right? So if you haven't designed the things properly, putting patches on top of that is very complex. And same thing with, for example, device management. So we have a device management platforms that allows to control the devices remotely. If you don't have this from the very beginning, then introducing it later, it will cost much more. So for me, a proper design and a proper counting with the right providers, and this is important because, when you talk especially in industrial IoT, there's many people going to the typical industrial providers where they are trying to do IoT, but there's very specific expertise that is required for this market, and it's coming from companies like WeTrack or Barbara that we come from the pure IoT world and with modern technology. So designing the things properly and counting with the right partners, I think, is the key for the ROI.
And over to you, Andres. I mean, any project or initiative, new program you do at a company, you have to justify to the decision makers. How did you all decide to implement an IoT project? What led to that decision, and how did you measure success?
Well, as you mentioned, Jerry, I am on the applied part, no, into the applied side, and not like Javier, for example, that they are into the devices, no, and focuses on the IoT. In logistics, and here, for example, here in Seur, it is very important to offer information to the customer. Customers are very focused on into have information every time. If you have a parcel to Madrid from Barcelona, for example, you want to know every time in the scan you have internally, no, if you are the customer. That's the main reason to implement IoT, for example. When you are implementing this kind of project, it is very important, as David says before, to have a very good design in preliminary design. You have to know all the parts of the projects and how do you to do for implement it.
Thank you. Okay, we're coming up towards the end of our time, so we have what we call the lightning round. You know, the quick question. Okay, so I'll go to the sort of the vendor provider side first, and I'd say, okay, Javier, what's the next thing on the horizon? What's the next big thing in IoT?
Too many. No, but no. To become more human. Now in IIoT, industrial IoT, NIoT, nano Internet of Things, the health IoT, there are so many surnames of IoT that the IoT combined with AI, artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, hyperconnectivity, cloud and edge computing, there are so many techie words that the IoT will be like the great paella. The best paella in the world is from Valencia. This is easy. We invent the paella, okay? So IoT is like the rice, but a paella has different ingredients. So what is going to happen with the IoT? That is going to combine with the rest of the paella ingredients in order to become more human, okay? Because basically technology doesn't make any sense without the human flavor. So at least we are doing that with the clients, with the partners, and they understand that technology is like the rice, a good ingredient, but it's not only. It's something needed, but it's not the essential, the flavor.
David, over to you. The next big thing on the horizon.
Well, I will be a little bit more techie. I think there are two things that are trends that we are seeing and will be in the close future very important. The first one is the edge computing. We've been putting everything on the cloud, but everybody has realized that sometimes the cloud is not perfect due to delays or cost and so on. So computation is going back to the devices. So I think edge computing is gonna change a lot of things. And secondly, I think blockchain. We saw a real very good panel before around blockchain. I think blockchain and IoT need to be merged at some point. I don't know when, but I think when these two worlds will be combined, the world is gonna explode. Yeah.
Super. And we'll end with Andres. And the way I'll pose the question here is, you've implemented IoT. What do you wish it would do for you that is not happening now?
My best wish, Jerry. Well, my best wish when you implement the IoT, I think you have this to discover new processes, to discover new information. You never have it before, and all this information, the main desire is how to do with all this information to make dashboard, to have and to know how to explode all this information. That is the best desire I have here in Seoul.
Thank you, and that's pretty typical when you look at technologies going into into industries and new uses. All of a sudden, you have all this data. When telematics first were being put on trucks, the biggest complaint I heard from folks is, "I have all this data. What do I do with it?" So that makes perfect sense. I appreciate everybody's time. I learned a lot. Fantastic presentations, fantastic insights. And now I turn it back over to Pilar. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Wow. Wow. Guys, thanks. We've managed to get the paella dish to the East Coast of North America through IoT discussion. Well, guys, we're going to go to our AI applied to logistic table. Okay, now this is going to be presented by Eric Johnson, Senior Technology Editor in Journal of Commerce, a B2B publication focused on logistics and global trade. He actually is focused on tools that shippers and their service providers use to manage their flow of goods domestically and internationally. In relation to AI, apparently he feels, he'll tell us more about this, that there is a general lack of understanding of what it is, where and how it is applied in the existing systems. So, Eric, all yours.
Thank you, Pilar, and thank you to Chango for inviting me to participate today. Yes, as Pilar mentioned, I'm a technology editor at the Journal of Commerce. We really focus on the management of freight and global trade, both domestically in North America, Europe, and Asia, but also globally, internationally on the modes that obviously shippers use to manage that. So my role is really to help the industry that I cover understand really complicated topics, new software categories that emerge. And one of those has undoubtedly been AI. I'm personally very fascinated with this space because I think it's one of those areas that the industry sort of doesn't even understand how much is happening in the background. And maybe they don't need to know how much is happening in the background. Maybe they just need to focus more on the benefits of AI and less on kind of the how it actually happens. But we are going to discuss over the next 40 minutes with a couple of experts how AI is sort of impacting the industry and what people should focus on, maybe what they shouldn't focus on, and where they should sort of prioritize investment in the space. So I'm really delighted to introduce two speakers. We were due to have three speakers. Unfortunately, Brett Ronk from Global Trade Magazine was not able to join us due to a situation that came up that prevented him. He's very sorry he's not able to, but we have two great speakers joining me in a sec. And I first want to introduce Ashutosh Prasad, who's CEO of Koi Reader. Ash, if you can you give us a little bit of background on yourself and what Koi Reader is, and then you can go ahead with your presentation.
Sure, Eric. Can you hear me? Okay, great. So first of all, hello everyone who are dialed in. My name is Ash, and I've been in the logistics and supply chain industry for close to 20 plus years. In the industry, I've played very different roles. Until May 2019, I was a vice president at XPO Logistics, helping XPO integrate all the acquisitions on the transportation side of the business to product innovation and strategy, helping sales and operations support. Prior to that, I worked at PricewaterhouseCoopers, Ernst & Young, Oracle, Blue Yonder, JDA, I2. So, I go all the way back into the early 2000s in the industry. And since I launched Koi Reader in May, June 2019, I've been fortunate to look into port operations to freight forwarding firms, intermodal companies all over the globe. So it's been a real privilege to expand my horizon from my consulting and operations background in the industry into the innovation side of the business. And it's really, like Eric said, it's really fascinating what's going on in the industry, and it's a lot of things is under the cover, and it's our goal to bring it out in the front of the industry. Hi, Eric. Can you hear me?
Yeah, sorry. Great. Yeah. Sorry, Ash. I thought you had another slide. Well, fantastic. That's great. Sort of intro to what you are doing and your background, and look forward to diving into a bunch of questions that I have around what you're doing. Wanted to introduce our second panelist, Pedro Nieto, who is a senior data specialist at GFT. Pedro, welcome. Delighted that you could join us. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and GFT?
Thanks, Aris. First of all, you made a great pronounce on my surname, so I think your response will be quite good. And I'm a senior data specialist in data engineering GFT. GFT is a global company. We're more than 12 countries nowadays, and we are a consultant for technology. So my day-to-day activities, they are mainly focused on artificial intelligence, IoT, some small part in blockchain and this sort of thing. So we are happy to help our customers to make small steps in this transition into technology, into digitalization, or just getting the better insights from what they have in hand. So they just, we are someone that can help us to go step by step in that way. So for the last 10 years, I have been helping different clients, different sectors to find the best solution in the market about technology. And as you mentioned, artificial intelligence is something that we can't stop talking about it nowadays. So that's my place.
Great. Fantastic. Well, maybe we can bring Ash back in too, and kind of start our roundtable discussion. First of all, encourage anyone who has questions to please get those in. Would love to hear from you as well. I certainly have a lot that I wanted to ask. Maybe we can start with an area that that Pilar mentioned that I see a lot in my interactions with people in the industry, which is a big misunderstanding around what AI is. Ash, what can you, how do you go into a prospective customer or someone you're just trying to educate about this market and explain to them what AI is and what it isn't, in a logistics context especially? Maybe you could start off big picture and then drill down to logistics.
Sure. So when I got a very, I think, I've got a very different perspective on the space and how I'm especially, I'm going out in the market from a co-leader as a company perspective. So when I started my journey, I met with a lot of people in the industry, and every single person told me that focus on one product. And, I have not operated that way when I was in my consulting days or in the industry. When you're engaged with a customer, the discussion was always, how can I add value to your operation? And, and when you are talking to a decision maker, the question always starts from, what am I bringing to the table? And technology comes after the fact. So we have built that in our DNA in how we are going after the market. So the discussion is always that, if you're a freight forwarder, you may have assets, and you may be an asset-based freight forwarder or a non-asset-based. So based on that, I structure my discussions. If you're a non-asset-based freight forwarder, we can talk about process automation, document digitization, customs filing, things like that using AI, and help them understand what is the value that AI brings versus a traditional, a BPO company that may help you enter the data where they make mistakes. How can AI help you in this process, from not just from data entry, from data enrichment, making HS code classification, predictions using AI versus just creating another RPA bot that's getting the data in the system. But if I'm talking to a freight forwarder that is asset based, so they typically own warehouses, and so then the discussion is entirely different. Oftentimes I may start with one side of the business and say that, look, here's warehouse automation. Inventory is your problem. Taking put away replenishment, your distribution channels, these are the problems, and this is how AI can help you solve that. So we help them create digital twin of the process. And when they see the value, it's very synergistic. The thought process is we are selling or we are talking to the functional buyer in a supply chain organization, and they're not so much concerned about whether you're bringing AI or RPA or how are you solving their problem, and that exactly is the approach we have taken. So once you can speak to the problem that they are facing today, and then you bring AI kind of technology to the table, AI and IoT sort of go hand in hand. They're very receptive, and every single client I've spoken to, they're reciprocated that way.
Great. Well, I wanted to get that question sort of just as a level set for the presentations that you both have. So Ash, maybe you can go into your presentation right now, and we'll follow that up with some slides from and a presentation from Pedro after that.
Sure. Can everyone see my presentation? Okay, great. So this is, I'll give a quick overview of what we have been working on. We started this journey, a while back when the industry was in Silicon Valley. Some of my friends, they would pay money to go to a Tesseract class that Google would conduct. Lots of people didn't even understand what Tesseract was. And, we started from that point. And like any other startup, we have matured over the course of time. But I was very clear from the very beginning that we don't want to be a one-trick pony, because logistics and supply chain as an industry is global. That's how we operated back in my consulting days. We did projects in North America with their counterparts in Europe or in South America. So we used to fly, wherever the business is, and that's how we build this. So our premise was very simple, that logistics and supply chain is global, whether you're talking to a company in Brazil or in the United States or out in Singapore or in India. It's usually the same with small local variances. So we looked at the entire value chain and we wanted to make a play there. And then we took two parts of the technology. So this is what we have done. We built the core technology for intelligent OCR from the ground up. We did a lot of R&D, and the difference between what we have built versus every other company out there, we built the tech that actually reads documents. So we are not going out to a customer and saying that here's, give me your commercial invoices and documents, and we're going to train a model. And you'll have, every time your format changes, we'll have to go back in and you have to retrain. We actually build the tech that reads document. So whether you're dealing with invoices, purchase orders, freight forwarding. Irrespective of the functional area that you are in, we are able to make a play because we have built the core tech. The second pillar that we are active in is machine vision. And combining, using these two, we are looking into the end-to-end supply chain. So our approach has been very successful. Since we launched, we have received awards in 4 continents. We are currently engaged in 12 countries, and our thesis has really been extremely successful. So let me share. Yeah. So if you go to our website, currently it's best view on Google Chrome. But if you go to our website, it tells you the story. Basically, what we did, we took AI, IoT, we built the core tech, and we are extremely strong in this space. And we created a concept of hyper automation. And you go to any supply chain organization, and based on their footprint, we start the discussion from a value perspective. And wherever, whether you're a company with freight forwarding, intermodal, both as part of your business, or you are just a freight forwarder, or you are a corporation with supply chain divisions where you're running warehouses and you're dealing with trucking companies, all of that. So these are the 4 functional areas where we are active in. Freight forwarding and customs. We are doing business with ports, intermodal organizations. We are partners with a lot of the leading platforms that a lot of listeners on this call are already aware of. In the warehousing space, we are working with from 50 million to $21 billion organizations. In fact, yesterday, $21 billion organization, Mahindra Group just announced that they have done a technology alliance with CoreReader as a result of the innovative work we did with them over the last few months. And when you go to the enterprise side, there are invoice purchase orders, and there are so many different use cases. So if you drill down further, we built the core tech, and now we are applying in these 4 functional areas: freight forwarding and customs, intermodal and drayage. So when ships are arriving, they have arrival notices, and because those arrival notices, even companies like Flexport, from what I understand, they are unable to consume that, and because of that, they are congestion in port. Dray carriers don't know where the loads are. So you can actually digitize that process, and we have done a tremendous job doing that, and to add to the visibility. Then looking into the freight operations where you're in air cargo, ground transportation, so the end-to-end logistics supply chain process. It's the same core tech, just different use cases, and that's why I am not a believer of being a one-trick pony. It's the same core tech, and these are just different use cases, and that's why I call it a platform. The second part of the business where we are focused in is machine vision. It's really industry 4.0, but from a very logistics and supply chain perspective. So in warehouse, back in my consulting days, we would go to organizations and we would talk about warehouse of the future, 4 walls projects and things like that. But inside the warehouse, once that warehouse is built and you're thinking of automation, there's a lot of after the fact thought that's in, and we are totally changing the game, and that's part of the reason Mahindra Group really liked what we did. So we have totally changed the way how warehouses think about inventory and how they create visibility by creating digital twins. We are actually eliminating the inventory problem. People go and count inventory at end of the week, end of the month, and how do we fix that? So we have done tremendous innovation in that space. Same in the if you go to the port side of the business, we are focused on container damage detection using AI and Internet of Things, IoT sensors, etc. So and if you expand it's the same core tech. Once you start, once you've got the core capabilities, you can apply to quality controls, load planning in air cargo industry when you're sending ULDs, assembling and deassembling of those. And we always love learning from large enterprises. So we are very out there, and we get invites from all over the world. Most recently, we got an introduction from invite from Switzerland. So it's a global business, and oftentimes we learn from customers what they're trying to solve, and if you find a good fit around our common core, then we take on the use case. So that's basically the concept of CoreReader technologies and what we are doing with AI and IoT across the entire value chain.
Fantastic, Ash. I've had a chance to have a couple long chats with you in the past, and always fascinated by what you are doing and the breadth of things that you're, the breadth of different organizations you're touching. Pedro, why don't you kind of walk us through your slides, and then after that we can jump into some more of those questions I had.
Okay, perfect.
Yep.
Let me share my screen, then we'll kick off. Can you see my screen?
Yep.
Yeah.
All good.
Okay. So as Cedric mentioned, I mentioned before, this is me, happy in the beach. So it's a little bit worse today. But I work for GFT. GFT is a big consultant across companies, as I mentioned, and I'm happy to work in many different projects for different clients in different situations. So my idea today is, instead of, I'm not gonna tell you what we can do in GFT. You can go to our website, you can do a check. I'm gonna tell you a story, one of the use cases we have with one of our clients. So I will guide you why we use artificial intelligence in there, why we didn't use any other thing, okay? Because why was the value? So let's kick off. When I talk to my clients, the biggest problem they have, there are two words that they always appear is, I need all the data and I need it in real time. This is nowadays, these are the two things that every client comes to us. Some years back, it was just all the data. The real time was like something we used to have, nice to have, but it was not a need. Nowadays, they want everything in data. They want everything and they want fast. When we talk, what happened when we talk about all data is that the volume is huge and the speed is huge. That's the real time. So we are already in a situation where we cannot handle the data by humans. That's the first place where artificial intelligence should come into the picture. I mean, humans can do some things perfectly, but volumes of data is not the strong part. So that's where we need artificial intelligence. So when we talk to the client, the first thing they need is, we have machines, we have systems, we have, we have trucks, we have cars, we have sending data all around, but I don't have a view. I need to see where things are. I need to know where we'll be tomorrow, and try to analyze how my business is going to evolve during time. That's normally what we are requested to do. So as an example, as I promised, I will take you an example, which is a car manufacturer. One of our clients is a car manufacturer. Well, if you think about the last time when you bought your car, you go to the dealer and you request a car, but this car should come from the factory. So when the car leaves the factory, it goes to the car line. With the car line is a place where they check in detail every car, some cars randomly, but they check the car. Then they go to logistics by train, by truck, whatever you call it, and they appear to the dealer. The problem we had when we reached them was that these 4 steps, they were handled independently. So assembly line is an island in the process, care line is an island, logistics is an island. They have a lot of information. They were split apart and they were not joining together. So the first place was, okay, let's put this data together, which is the first step we always do in the organization, is all the data should be centric. I mean, let's go to data-centric. I'm not talking about data lake or other technology. I'm just talking about all the data available in the same ecosystem, same language, same way of using data. So what did we do? If we go to the assembly line, what was the goal we have in the assembly line was, okay, so what do you do here? Assembly line, if you have it in your mind, is someone is in front of a car, they are assembling pieces, a car is going very fast, but they have to report, okay, there is a defect, something is going wrong, I need to stop the line, go to a computer, and those things. The first thing we included here was the usage of the voice. So with the help of Google and Dialogflow, we were capable of putting people a headset where they can talk while they work. So using artificial intelligence to process this voice is something that can only be done with artificial intelligence. I mean, you can put someone on the other side listening to the conversation and typing, but that's not the way we do things nowadays. So this is one of the scenarios we start working with them, is how to interact this with a lot of complex, because you will probably think, okay, it's just voice. I talk to my Alexa, I talk to my Google Home, and it works. But imagine working in a factory where all the machines are working all the time, the noise, everything working continuously. That was quite a challenge, which we achieved here in this situation. If we go one step further and we go to the second step, I mentioned what is the care line. The car line is where someone inspect a vehicle randomly. So they get one car and they check, okay, is everything, are all the bolts in place, all the pieces of the car perfectly, there's no scratch and no dent, something like that. What we put in here was, why don't we put very high definition cameras, and we, instead of selecting some random cars, we inspect all the cars looking for defects. So we can ensure that every car that has left the factory has gone through a door, let's call it a door, where the cars go through, and you have all the cameras around, and you can inspect this data. As I mentioned before, we can't expect someone to look all the pictures all the time, because it's not something that can happen that way. That's why we need to use artificial intelligence. On the other hand, if you try to program this, there is no way you can program this to be so responsive that you can, that tomorrow a new car arrives into the chain and you can respond to that in a real time. Okay, that's why, as I mentioned, artificial intelligence is the backbone that we use in this project, in this kind of project. And in the last part, last but not least, was, okay, now we have the car, now it has left the factory, and what happens now? The car goes truck by truck, it changes between trucks, and we want to get it to the dealer. The idea is that we can handle that using the data and controlling using IoT. If we can use GPS on a car and we can send data real time, positioning the car in the world, we can have a place where you can provide the dealer an estimate time, like it's going to arrive in 2 days, it's going to arrive in 2 hours. That's the way of calculation we can do using machine learning for thousands or millions of cars in real time. That's the sort of thing we use in this part. But we have to keep in mind that it's not just providing value, it's not just providing data to the dealer or providing, it's just controlling the full ecosystem. When we completed this project, the idea is that now you control the chain, you control the logistics, you know where things happen, and there are no holes where you lost control. This was one of the situations and different parts of artificial intelligence that we have used and put it in place for this kind of scenario. I hope you get a better impression about the things we do and the kind of projects we do and the artificial intelligence, how we can use for them. So Eric, this was more or less my presentation. I want to keep it short, and let's move to a roundtable.
Yeah, fantastic. Great, very tangible, sort of use case for people to understand. It seems sort of limitless, the opportunities. So I want to kind of focus as much as we can on helping people understand. One thing I think about as it applies to AI in logistics or sort of supply chain use cases is something I see across a bunch of different technologies that I report on, which is people seem very focused on the what rather than the why or the output of the technology. The way I always think about this is not too many people think about how the internet works. Yet everything we do is on the internet, but there seems to be a big focus on what blockchain is and what AI actually is. How do you sort of go about those conversations with clients and customers and sort of gear them toward what this enables rather than getting focused too much on the, the sort of nuts and bolts of it? Maybe Ash, you can start off, and Pedro, your thoughts.
Sure. Thanks, Eric. Like I mentioned early on, our focus is always on the value part of the equation, not the technology itself. And despite being in the industry for so long, every customer, we find that they have some uniquenesses. So once we go in, we are always listening that how can we best add value to what you are doing and how you are doing today. And if we can apply technology to help you do that better, that's always the conversation. And sometimes it's AI is one part of it. Behind the scenes, there's a lot more. For example, we can talk about automation all day, and there's a lot of focus in the industry about automation platforms. There are lots of funding that has taken place, but I don't see these as isolated functions. So if you are a customer, you're not looking necessarily to go into a middleware interconnected ecosystem of supply chain systems. That's just one part of it. There are companies like Pedro, Web Methods, etc. They've been staying in the integration space for so long. It's just a different way of using cloud infrastructure that AWS Azure provides to the equation. So, I think the key is talking about the value, and in create the value, you have to have all parts of the business, whether you're doing partnerships with these ecosystems, or you have in-house capability, or you might be using a customer's existing ecosystem. I think it's careful not to be lost in the technology. The second thing I would add over there is I see a lot of and I've traveled to presentations in Silicon Valley. There are people who stand out in front of the audience and they say you have processed 1.5 million documents, 99.99% accuracy. I mean, I'm quite frankly appalled at the lies that are being spelled out in front of the customer, because it's setting a wrong expectation for the industry as a whole. AI is not there yet. There are areas where AI is it performs very well, but especially areas like document digitization, it's not accurate. It can range anywhere from 70% to 95%. If the formats are fixed, anyone can hard code it. Then you don't need AI. You can just do basic Python programming, and you can get 100% accuracy there. So I think as an industry, it's our job to bring trust and accountability versus just getting lost in the sales cycle and telling customers something that's not entirely true. It creates a bad. This industry is taking place. There's opportunity for everyone. If you look at research by organizations like PwC, there's AI as a whole is a $25 billion industry. And logistics supply chain, there's a huge opportunity. So if you bring the two together, the pie is really big. So I think we got to have the conversation from a value perspective, and then bring technology like AI, IoT, etc. into the equation to see how we can solve the problem.
Yeah, Pedro, I'm interested in your thoughts, and also maybe I can add another question to the mix as well. In your experience, are companies best suited sort of outsourcing their AI needs, or do some of them have some capability internally?
Yeah, let me give my thoughts on the first one, so I clear my mind and then go back. And probably normally when we approach our client, we are more, if you are a Tarantino fan, it's more like Mr. Wolf. So we go to solve problems. So if we ask them, what's your problem? We go to solve the problem. If artificial intelligence is in the picture or not, it will come afterwards. They need a solution. And the problem comes when, on the other side, there's so much hype about artificial intelligence that if you don't put artificial intelligence in the proposal, it's not going to make it. So what is it? It's not just us it's the market that is requesting this to play this game. Yeah. So let's see. From my understanding, it comes on any situation, but normally we just talk about solution. And sorry, your second question was, sorry, can you please
the extent to which companies need to look for a third party
outside
to provide this, or whether they have sort of more capability gradually in-house to manage this.
I think it's quite of a balance. I mean, when you do artificial intelligence, there is a percentage that you need to know the data, and that only happens in-house. But we are we are in the state of the art about artificial intelligence yet. We are scratching the surface. There is a lot of things we need to learn yet, and that can be learned in-house, because you would need a very big team learning all the time, and that's probably where, it's bad for me to say, but where consultancies with more rotation, with more specialists, they come into the picture and help you accelerate this process. Maybe in the future you can internalize this knowledge, but as a catalyst at the beginning, I think you need to outsource.
Okay, interesting. one of the sort of ways I think about automation as I've sort of myself sought to understand this better is sort of as on a spectrum of kind of, RPA maybe on one side, and what I've had people describe to me as kind of intelligent automation, which I perceive to be around, automation where it's suggesting a course of action, or the system is actually undertaking a course of action. Where do you think, kind of your clients and the industry as a whole is on that spectrum for the most part? Are we still sort of at that RPA stage? Are we moving more toward that intelligent automation stage? And is that RPA kind of stuff a requirement to move to that intelligent automation, kind of environment? Pedro, I'll give you first crack at this, and then Ash.
Yeah, that's fine. For my point of view, RPA has an ecosystem where the problem is quite close. I mean, you have a problem, it's not going to change in time. You can automate an ecosystem like a closed ecosystem. When you go to artificial intelligence, you're in the jungle. So you have pictures. Imagine, let's put an example. You need to find out if people is wearing a mask in a shopping mall. That's the jungle. I mean, you don't know how people is going to wear it. You know how people is going to be. You can't use RPA, or at least not from the best of my knowledge, you can't use RPA to that sort of things. But if you have a process in your organization that is very tedious, every day you do the same, you can automate that. That's the place for RPA. So I think we can balance both, and it doesn't mean that you need to use always artificial intelligence, because sometimes I have seen using artificial intelligence in some clients. When we reach there, I say, why are you using this? This can be solved with a couple of code lines for all the things. It's just, as I mentioned before, because they are forced to use it, so they can go to their manager and say, we are using artificial intelligence in this department, and that's why we are. So,
yeah, interesting. Ash?
Yeah, it's a question that's near and dear to me, because when I was a decision maker, I personally hated RPA, and everyone was talking about RPA. And if you really think about what RPA is, it's been around since early 2000. So why are we talking about it in 2021, right? RPA is nothing but a screen scraping technology. You move the mouse, you type on the keyboard, key logging and screen pixel capture. That's all it is. And what has happened in the industry is lots of companies, they got massive funding, and they created a huge army of sales teams, and it was sold as platform. And when one part of the forest catches fires, it spreads. So now we have many RPA platforms. As an organization, do you really need RPA platforms? So I think there is a place for RPA platforms, and it's not necessary for intelligent automation. So although we are partners with UiPath, but not in a single deployment we have done till date. We needed the RPA platform itself, and oftentimes if you use a platform, it increases your cost of deployment. So for intelligent automation, what you really need is look at your process. Most of if you think from a document perspective, most of the companies, they are exchanging documents over emails. Why, if you create a process that can capture this from emails, so we created a machine learning service which interacts with the emails that are coming in. You don't need an RPA bot for that. RPA bot, it's a very, as a decision maker, I would question, because the thought behind setting RPA bots is, hey, you have a worker that costs you $65,000, and I can give you bots which will bring down your cost for $30,000. It's that's the wrong discussion. The discussion shouldn't be about replacing people. It's about using your existing people. How do we add value to the process using technology? So intelligent automation is about taking an existing process with existing people, and how do you help them do things much faster? And for that, I don't believe that you need RPA bots, AI, API, and email interfaces like the machine learning services. That's more than sufficient. That's all you need for intelligent amazing automation. process automation, hyper automation, or intelligent automation. These are different names being used in the industry. RPA is just a screen scraping technology with a bot that is deployed in a control tower that can call APIs.
Interesting. Very interesting answer. We probably have time for one more quick question. We're actually in our last minute, so maybe like really keep this short. I would love for each of you to maybe address one ROI from an investment in AI that people may not think is very obvious. Pedro, maybe you can give us something quickly, 30 seconds.
That is not so obvious.
Yeah.
It's hard to go, but if we go to the obvious, it's gonna sound like the bad guy in the call, but the personal, we save a lot of personal automated processes.
Yeah. Ash?
I think, we the data entry part in document digitization, not many people realize that 10 to 12% of the data entry leads to customer satisfaction issues. There are mistakes done by people. I think when we're thinking of digitization of this process, I don't think everyone is thinking about the inaccuracies due to the human error. I think that's a good value add over there.
Fantastic. Well, Pedro, Ash, thank you so much. I learned a lot in a very short period of time, so I really appreciate your time and perspective today. And thank you again to Chango for having us all today.
Yeah, like
this, guys. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks.
Bye.
Yeah. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Well, thank you. Fascinating. This AI applied to logistics and, well, in general. Thank you all. Well, we are closing we're in the last slot of today. Last but not least, we gave way to cybersecurity table. This table is going to be presented by Will Fedway, Vice President of Industry and Government Affairs in Virginia Maritime Association, where he develops and implements new maritime-related business initiatives and regulatory strategies to promote, protect, and encourage international and domestic commerce through Virginia's port. Well, welcome, and Will, you're on stage, my dear.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for having me, and a big thanks to Chango for partnering on this event. We're very happy to be part of this. So again, we're joining us today for our cybersecurity panel as part of this Light 21 Logistics and Technology event. My name is Will Fedway, and I'm the Vice President at the Virginia Maritime Association, which is Virginia's premier maritime and supply chain trade association, representing over 450 member companies in the maritime and supply chain space. And we really exist to protect, promote, and encourage commerce through Virginia's port. We've been doing that for about 100 years, but you can learn more about us at vamaritime.com. So on this panel today, we're going to be discussing the role that cybersecurity plays in the supply chain and logistics space. Today, we've heard a lot of outstanding technological applications through blockchain, IoT, and AI, and how they're transforming the supply chain. But how do we secure these technological breakthroughs? With digital transformation is really leading to rapid growth in attack surface areas. When you think about the transportation and logistics industry, for example, when you think of transitioning to and dependence on IoT, is not being matched by equivalent attention to cybersecurity, creating gaps. So where's the immediate threat? And is our workforce prepared to meet these type of threats? So today our expert panelists are Kevin Esser with G2 Ops, Daniel Feria with Oero Inc., and Pina Melchiona with Canadian Institute of Traffic and Transportation. Thank you each for joining us today for this conversation. We're very excited to have you with us. And each of our panelists are going to have 5 minutes to present how their organizations are bolstering the security of these new industries and defending the supply chain, and followed by a panel discussion. So our first speaker today is Kevin Esser, who's the Executive Vice President and Chief Business Officer of G2 Ops. As a founding partner of G2 Ops, Kevin manages the delivery of G2 Ops' portfolio of security engineering, cybersecurity, systems engineering, and model-based systems engineering services to its national security partners. He also works directly with G2 Ops' client base to ensure service delivery is collaborative and grounded in a culture that facilitates innovation and creativity. His broad skill set includes delivery of cybersecurity solutions within challenging tactical environments, the application of model-based systems engineering to complex systems, and addressing cyber and security risk challenges within the greater maritime ecosystem. Without much further ado, Kevin, over to you.
Fantastic. Thank you for that introduction, Will. I want to thank Chango and the other sponsors of the Light conference today, and I want to say to the other panelists, I've really enjoyed the conversations today. Very enlightening. I just want to start out by saying that I think one of the cybersecurity is often the last to the table, and so I think it's ironic that we're the last panel today, and often it's seen as a barrier to entry into new capability. You know, we're the drag in the machine that's adding cost, you know, perhaps jeopardizing revenue, you know, kind of taking away the ability of the organization to perform its mission. And I want to try to change that a little bit today with my comments. I want to talk about resiliency. So if we think about cybersecurity properly, what we're really doing is providing a way for the organization to really achieve its mission and make that mission resilient against attack, you know, both from within the organization and from without. And so I want to change the conversation and have people start thinking about security as a part of how they make their operations resilient and actually preserve revenue, maybe even drive up revenue. And so I think one of the things that's important for us to talk about also is the concept of the threat landscape. You know, frequently I think we don't think about the landscape of threat and what that means to the environment. In 2013, the Defense Science Board put together a way to think about threats in a series of tiers. And the thought was tier 1 is your least capable threat, tier 6 is your most capable, and tier 1 is acting on just environments, vulnerabilities that exist in the marketplace today. Tier 6 is a nation state that's able to create new capability, new attacks, and then go affect those. And so in 2013, when that came out, I think that was very insightful. But only 8 years later, I think it's a little bit obsolete. And I think it's important for this group to think about the fact that because of the existence of the black market in malware, because of the dark web, because of the compromises in nation state capability that have hit that marketplace, all tiers are now active. Nation state level capability, threat capability are things that can be activated against our systems today. And so I think that's an important concept to think about. So we're not just worried about the script kiddie, we're also worried about nation state level capabilities working against our systems. And so what that means is whether an attacker is looking at our system to take advantage of, to exfiltrate our intellectual property, to exfiltrate data, disrupt our service, wants to levy a ransomware threat against us, or they simply want to place something on our systems that will be persistent, that they can activate later. What they're really doing is holding our organizational revenue at risk. They're holding at risk the trust that our customers have in our systems. And our ability to deliver to our customer base. And ultimately, they're holding at risk our brand. And so kind of take that advanced and evolving threat landscape and add it to what the panels have talked about earlier today, which is, you know, we're expanding the Internet of Things. We're adding sensors to this large infrastructure. We are adding to our traditional IT, we're adding applications. We're moving into the cloud. We're connecting our vendors and our partners and our warehouses and our production lines and our transportation systems into this large infrastructure. And it's all becoming one, what I'll call a mission execution space. It's one large space that we've connected together now to drive revenue and to drive our ability to deliver just-in-time logistics capability, to improve our supply chain efficiencies, to do all those things that are fantastic and drive revenue and allow us to keep our customers happy and provide new capability. But what I think gets forgotten, and this is the resilience piece, is how do those systems all work together? And do we take the time to think about that, to think about how they work together? and what those interactions and interfaces and what that connectivity means, and try to put that into context. Not all of our operations are of the same criticality. Not all of our operations contribute directly to revenue. Not all of our operations and our connectivity in that mission execution space contribute directly to what we think of as our brand and how the world sees us. And so we need to, that's really the first step. And that's really one of the key things that we do here at G2Ops is help our customers really understand and enumerate their architecture. Here's what I have. Here's my systems. Here's how I do tech insertion, how I do tech refresh. When I do that, how I'm connecting my vendors. Here's my cloud infrastructure. Here's my new application information. And we look at how that works together. We develop what we call operational mission threads, which help illuminate how you deliver the services you do for your system. And then we think about how to improve that cybersecurity. So what we call the unified risk management. It's a series of processes and tools that we've wired together to allow an organization to look at its people, its process, and its technology. All three of those attributes together are part of the cybersecurity picture. They all should be addressed, and they all contribute to operational resiliency. And so I'll just kind of leave you with the thought that cybersecurity needs a place at the table because cyber is not a one-size-fits-all solution, whether you're small, medium, large, nonprofit, government organization. You're unique. What you do is unique, and what allows you to do your thing is unique, and it requires attention in that fashion. So our goal is to make you operationally resilient and provide operational cybersecurity measures that have a high return on investment. So thanks for your time. Back to you, Will.
Excellent. Thank you, Kevin. Our next speaker is Daniel Feria with Oero. Daniel is an accomplished business leader in the information security industry. He's the founding CEO of Oero and currently serves as the president for North America and the chief security officer. He is also a trusted advisor on cybersecurity to governments and large corporations. Daniel holds a bachelor's and a master's degree in computer science with a specialization in artificial intelligence and is a graduate of MIT's Building Global Innovators program. Daniel, over to you.
Good morning, everyone. So I would like to start by thanking the previous speaker. Those were very valid comments on how cybersecurity comes last to the table and oftentimes comes to the table as an expense instead of a benefit. And today, my presentation hopefully will help everyone understand how you can actually turn some of those costs into optimizations, not just to the supply chain, but also to the overall security of your employees. So I'm going to start by giving a quick background on Oero. Oero was founded in 2017. I was the founding CEO of the company jointly with a team in Spain. The company has now grown to become a global enterprise with clients pretty much in 4 continents. And some of our clients are well-known brands. We've done supply chain optimization management for companies like GlaxoSmithKline. We do identity management for large insurance companies such as Sura in South America. And recently as well, we've started dabbling into the defense market where we're now working with Arc Nuclear, which is an American company that has a subsidiary in New Brunswick for small nuclear reactors. And one of our most sort of well-known projects would be CATSA, where the thermal cameras that the government of Canada is using for the COVID-19 response were delivered in partnership with FLIR Systems. Today, I want to walk you on how, with a use case that we've built at Oero that started at a small regional airport in Canada, we were able to roll it out to the 17th largest airports in the country. The idea was simple. How do we enhance the process of areas that are not restricted by PKI regulations and leverage that capability of facial recognition, of blockchain, and all the technologies that have been talked about today, to create a business solution that would enable not just employees, but also contractors to have secure access to a particular area of the building. So a good example, and not to be too specific on numbers, but I believe the number of employees that a tier 1 airport and contractors would have per day coming into the facilities, we're talking about 40, 50,000 people. That causes lines, that causes not an easy verification process when we think about the fact that you're now talking about having to issue rate cards, you're having to issue some kind of credential for you to be able to get into the building. So with Oro, what we've been able to do was optimize that complex supply chain by simply taking the physical aspect of it and provide a much safer environment for people to just walk through the door and get into the building. Now, that being said, the same principles and processes can be applied to all aspects of the supply chain. This works for quality assurance, as we have done, for example, for GSK. And the same principle it has also been particularly important when we think about the fact that due to the COVID-19 response, we've now gotten into the thermal camera business, and we've actually have a platform that was able to blend that physical security with thermal screening with the identity management. So really, what we were able to do was creating a solution that not only saved the clients money on the whole identity verification and supply chain management, but also we've provided that extra layer of security that provides the C-suite that, you know, warm and fuzzy feeling that now they can rest knowing that they're not exposed to the same level of traditional centralized point of breach that has been one of the key issues of cybersecurity. Let me just check here. Oops, sorry, wrong button. 1 second. Oh, all right. I guess that's it for today. I apologize. My time is up.
Daniel, thank you very much for that presentation. You bring up a lot of great points about this interactivity, especially during a pandemic. So our next speaker today, our final speaker, is Pina Melchiona. Ms. Melchiona is currently the president and CEO of the Canadian Institute of Traffic and Transportation, a learning and development organization offering professional certification in supply chain logistics. Prior to her role at CITT, Ms. Melchiona worked for several national banks and financial institutions and started her career as a lawyer. Ms. Melchiona has a Juris Doctorate Law degree from Osgoode Hall Law School and has a specialized Master's of Business Administration and Financial Services from Dalhousie University. She completed the ICD Rotman Director's Education Program and has been awarded the ICDD designation in 2015. Ms. Melchiona is a member in good standing of both the Ontario and Saskatchewan Bar Associations and holds several board positions, including Director of the Royal Canadian Mint, SGI Insurance Canada, and the Raymond James Trust Company. Pina, thank you for joining us, and over to you.
Thank you very much, and thank you to the organizers for including us. I think I come today from a little bit of a different perspective, both the Canadian perspective, but as well as the logistics perspective. So the CITT is Canada's largest logistics association. We represent a number of logistics professionals, thousands of companies across the country, all of the modes of transportation, including everything from warehousing and distribution. And so part of my role here is in the role of an association responsible for getting timely information out to our members. Most of my comments here are based on, it's probably a few years old, but on the digitization of the supply chain in Canada. specifically the role that technology would play, and many of which we've heard here today from our previous speakers. But one of the things that this report specifically calls attention to is the fact that there is a skill gap. So many of our logistics professionals, I would categorize as probably not being early adopters of technology, and therefore that in itself is an enhanced risk when it comes to cybersecurity. Well, and my screen just froze on me, so I'm going to wing this. So many of the things that we've heard about here today are things like blockchain technology, Internet of Things, automated vehicles, automated drones. Those are all things that Canadian companies are adopting quick. I did come from financial services, and I don't think we're unique in the logistics industry to say that technology is having a disruptive effect on the way our businesses operate and work. And we're not alone in that, I don't think. But I will say that I personally look at technology not so much as a disruptor as it is an enabler. And so some of the great things we've heard about here today, things like blockchain and the Internet of Things and AI, are all going to improve the way we do things, but it does come with enhanced risk. And in particular, one of the things that has started to happen in Canada is around the vaccine deployment. So we've had a lot of attention, and in fact, the Canadian Secret Intelligence Services did reach out to the CITT as an association for the voice of logistics professionals and in our role in disseminating information. One of the things that came to the forefront with the rollout of the vaccine, and something that I actually have some slides on to share if I'm not able to get them out on the screen, is that I don't think we necessarily think of national security threats when it comes to cybersecurity. You know, we think of data breaches, we think of malware, ransomware, those types of things. And I don't know that we're necessarily thinking about the national perspective. And one of the things that government has actually been pretty active in partnering with us around is disseminating information about the current national security risk, especially as it pertains to the vaccine rollout, which is top of mind for us in Canada and in other places of the world as we're trying to get injections in arms. And so when we think about cybersecurity and we think about, you know, automated vehicles and how they might be able to be infiltrated for either terrorist or nefarious purposes. When we think about our intellectual property and our processes, our competitive advantage that has the ability to be infiltrated. These are all things that have started to come to the forefront when it comes to cybersecurity. And in Canada in particular, our government is taking a look at a new governance framework for how we look at national security and governance, especially as it pertains to cybersecurity. So I'm bringing a little bit about the Canadian perspective as well as the logistics perspective, but I don't think that we're alone. I think that government's challenge when it comes to national security threats is what is considered classified versus what is considered unclassified information. And how do you disseminate the information to the people who are most at risk? You know, the early days of the pandemic certainly highlighted that in order for a society to function civilly, we need an efficient supply chain to get goods to market. And when there was a delay in that, whether intentional or not, it became apparent that supply chain is fundamental to a civil functioning of society. So I apologize that I had a little bit of IT issues. Speaking about IT, I am happy to share my slides. I do have a lot of important information on the slide, so I'm hoping that the organizers can distribute that. Back to you, Will.
Excellent. Thank you, Pina. And Daniel and Kevin as well, all fantastic presentations. You can all see that our panel has a deep and diverse experience base, both in the cybersecurity sector as it relates to the logistics supply chain as well. In our remaining time, we're going to transition now to a roundtable portion. I have some broader questions that I'd like our guest panelists to answer regarding cybersecurity. And as just a note, when I talk about the supply chain, we're going to talk about the movement of goods, but also the movement of people and passengers. So it's really logistics and supply chain at a higher level. So what I'd like to offer up to the group to answer, kind of the first question is, what does this increase in digital connectivity between the supply chain partners mean from a cybersecurity perspective when you think about all the different technologies we've talked about today?
I'm happy to start. And one of the things that I think about when I think about supply chain is the interconnectivity between people. And so when it does come to cybersecurity, it's not only important for organizations to be confident in their own tools that enhance their cybersecurity or protect against cybersecurity threat, but it really does call into question the need to make sure you are vetting everybody in that supply chain. Because a smaller vendor somewhere in your supply chain may not have the robust capabilities that you have, and that could be a potential data leak or exposure to important and sensitive information. So I would say that when it comes to the supply chain in particular, the interconnectivity of the intramodalism is something that we need to think about, because it's not only due diligence on your own behalf, it's now doing due diligence to everybody in your supply chain. And so the statement that you're only as strong as your weakest link is absolutely true when it comes to cybersecurity.
Excellent.
Yeah, I can build on that. Pina's right on it. I think it's not, I think too often we think about, well, it's my supply chain or their supply chain. It's the supply chain. And with a lot of the clients that we work with, you can draw a digital line all the way from the logic controller that's embedded with a sensor, in a warehouse, directly to a system, say on a float unit, on a ship, on a maritime environment, between the network connectivity and, RF connectivity, it's all connected together. And so an issue in one place is an issue in the other. And, the threat environment is capable enough that they will find a way to exercise that weakest link and then use it to move laterally throughout that system. And so the most important thing is really getting a handle on what is that infrastructure. I've wired these things together because they're important to an efficient supply chain, but what does that really mean? How do they operate together? And what's the posture of that collective system of systems? That's really the critical point.
Daniel?
Yeah, absolutely. And well, the current trend is for IoT to continue to develop. And when we think about IoT, we now think about thousands of connected nodes that represent the broadest, most dangerous potential supply chain leak, because you're now talking about defending a large number of nodes instead of focusing on a single point of failure. So I actually think cybersecurity will become more and more important, primarily because, let's just say, even with blockchain, depending on what type of consensus and protocols you're using, you could actually take control over the supply chain if for some reason you don't protect your network and the way the nodes have been laid out accordingly. So it's quite a complex topic, and I do believe that it will be the pain and those unfortunate events that over time will drive people to say, oh, I have to spend some time and energy and resources in my organization to actually figure it out.
Thank you for that. And Pina brought up a great point too earlier about the national security implications. I know here in our port in Norfolk, Virginia, world's largest Navy base, but also second largest port on the East Coast by tonnage. So lots of commercial vessels, lots of government vessels, and cybersecurity probes kind of all the time. So with that in mind, my next question for the panel is, so where's the immediate threat? What is the first vulnerability to address, or where are the gaps?
So I can jump on that one, Will. I think that the immediate threat is, really our infrastructures are living, breathing things. They're constantly changing, they're moving, they're expanding, they're contracting. And so the best answer is it depends. The first thing is to figure out what is it you have. Are you managing the configuration of those systems? Have you determined your critical flows, your critical threads? And then do the analysis to identify where am I vulnerable? And so from that point, then you can start to answer your question, Will, which is, okay, what is the threat? What's the threat intelligence telling me? What's the business intelligence telling me about how an adversary would operate against my system? And so, again, not one size fits all. The most important thing to me, and how I protect my system, processes, services, and revenue is not necessarily the same as Daniel's or Pina's. And so I think that it's a very, very fluid situation right now, and there's really not one thing that I would say is the most important.
I can actually add to that. And I like the way you started your answer, it depends, because that is the typical lawyer answer, and it's my favorite answer. But if I could maybe ask the organizers to share my screen, I think there is a gap because we tend to think about these things in silos. And so we tend to think about cybersecurity in a silo. And when it came specifically to the vaccine rollout and threats against our national security, it really was looking holistically. And so we need to look at not only cybersecurity, we need to look at personnel security. You could have the best systems in the world, and all it takes is one employee who responds to a phishing email, who, you know, inadvertently releases passcodes to expose that entire system. You have to look at the physical security of your operations. You need to look at the entire supply chain integrity. So, you know, my answer is that you have to, there isn't any one immediate. I think you have to be looking holistically at your entire processes and guarding against cybersecurity. I will also say that the briefing that we received from the Canadian Security Intelligence Service was that our traditional thinking about who these foreign bad actors are has really changed. You know, we typically think about diplomats or intelligence officers, and really what it's becoming is, you know, joint ventures, foreign investment funds. It could even be academia, you know, professors or students who aren't even aware that they're a potential target to infiltrate organizations. And then these foreign actors will use their vulnerabilities or weaknesses, a family back home, to be able to secure and get information. So all of this to say is, you know, the threat security is real. Look more holistically. You know, this isn't what we watch on TV in terms of espionage games. It could be a low-level employee who allows, you know, data breaches into your system. And I think you have to look holistically at your entire system when it comes to integrity.
Yeah, to add to that, I would say that the biggest cyber threat, and this goes in line with what you guys have said, I guess it's adding on just with the name what it is. So social engineering is really one of the largest threats to organizations. I think from a technology perspective, we've figured it out for the most part, you know, knock on wood, how to, you know, make a decent firewall, how to create a DDoS system to prevent DDoS. Like we've pretty much covered the majority of threats. So now we spend a lot of our time trying to build better algorithms that will, you know, have less false positives or things like that. Yet the most simple and basic thing is the human element being able to manipulate the system and exploit it from the inside. That being said, I think the most immediate threat to cybersecurity is actually the lack of education that we are providing in our school system, and the fact that it's not even a subject, even though you're taking people and graduating them out of high school without even knowing what cybersecurity is. So I think education is really the only way to create that first line of defense against cyber threats.
Daniel, I think that's a great segue. You must have read my mind, because my next question was going to talk about where we are as a workforce. And is the workforce prepared for basically where we are now with emerging technology and cybersecurity, you know, let alone the future? So how's our workforce looking, and what are we doing to address it?
I can certainly start. And I would say from the Canadian perspective and from the logistics perspective, I would say that this is not an industry that are early adopters. The logistics professional is not an IT expert. And so there is a skills gap. And one of the things that, you know, we work towards, especially with our organization, is closing that skill gap. What kind of information do you need around, you know, blockchain, AI, and making sure that people in your logistics part of your business understand the IT part of the business. So I would say, speaking purely from my perspective, no, there is a skill gap here, and we need to pay particular attention to it for all of the reasons we've talked about here today.
And I think there's a lack of awareness between the fluidity between what we kind of consider our personal life and our professional life. In the work we've done with, small through large, very large organizations, we see very similar, what I'll call kind of cyber hygiene deficiencies, where an employee will use the same password for their Microsoft Teams or Office 365 environment that they use for Facebook or Instagram or Twitter or their bank. And that prevents, those, when their Facebook password is compromised, that means that their professional environment is also compromised, because that's how the threat works. So I think there's a little bit of a misnomer there in how, a digital, threat actor operates. They always start with the most basic set of compromises and they work their way up. If they never have to move beyond the basic exploit, they don't and they won't. And so if they can take a password off the dark web and apply it, to your professional, database management system, to your cloud environment, to your Office 365 environment, they will do that. And once they're in, they're in. And then if they need to, they will ramp up capability to move laterally. And so that, kind of basic cyber hygiene is a huge problem, both in our professional lives and our personal lives, and they are absolutely connected together.
I like to think there's a balance between how you apply cyber and you don't make your workforce miserable. I think passwordless solutions are the future, just because CEOs will make a decision. Okay, we're going to improve our cybersecurity stack, and then the message gets pushed out, and suddenly the staff asks, okay, so you're telling me that I have to log into my computer 5 times a day and I need to go to Google Authenticator 5 times a day. You will probably get some resistance. And when I say probably, is you will definitely get some resistance. And when you get into 2FAs and MFAs, then suddenly people start hating you. So I think the breaking those barriers of entry and the user experience for the workforce to adopt some of those extra measures, combined with education, will definitely solve the problem. But like everything in every industry, there's a path that we need to continue and carry on. And I think we're positioned now better than we ever were to have a successful cybersecurity strategy being implemented across at least the largest organizations in North America.
And Will, can I just quickly follow up on that?
Sure.
The education piece is fundamental, because some of the research that I have seen is, people of my generation, without aging myself, we are more hesitant and concerned about data and privacy than perhaps the millennials are. They were born with technology. It's fluid for them. They choose seamless ease of use over things like data protection or privacy protection. And so this is where I think the educational piece needs to come in, the awareness around why cybersecurity is important to enhance. So I just wanted to make sure, because there is a generational divide between how we look at technology and how we use it, and perhaps one generation using prudence, another generation may completely think that that is an over-exaggeration of the protection you need to take.
Excellent. So a quick follow-up for the panel, especially Daniel had mentioned on not making your workforce miserable. So has the pandemic really increased these potential attack vectors due to remote working? And really, is there a sweet spot between productivity and security? As you mentioned, do you want your employees spending the whole time authenticating their logins, or do you want them working? Where's that sweet spot?
Well, the pandemic has been the greatest accelerator of digital transformation in the history of computer science. So we have seen traffic like we've never seen before. And you looked at companies that literally were booming through this pandemic, Zoom, and even the one we're using here today, StreamYard. There's so many of them now that I can't even keep tabs on them anymore. But at the end of the day, the security in a situation like this is still catching up. I mean, it's only been a year. A lot of companies got caught off guard, and they had to move quickly. And moving quickly in a large organization usually is a multi-year process. So that being said, I think that the market is evolving with some of these solutions. Employees over the next few, potentially 2 years, are going to experience significant changes on the way they work and authenticate themselves within an organization. Digital identity as a space has had tremendous evolution, and you know, I would give credit to some organizations, both in the US and Canada. In Canada, DIAC has been fundamental in bringing people together, and the fact is now those vectors that we need to follow on what protection should look like are going to be different, but I think most companies will adjust to it and they will just be fine. That's my 2 cents.
Excellent. Pina or Kevin, you got a 30-second answer for that?
I'm going to say absolutely. I echo Daniel's comments. This has been the greatest accelerator. And I don't think that we're ever going to go back to pre-pandemic days. There is going to be a new normal. Technology is going to be part of that new normal. Remote working is going to be part of that new normal. And so how do you maintain the same kind of vigor that you would ordinarily use in the office and apply that to your home setting to make sure that enhanced cybersecurity measures are in place and it's seamless? So short answer is absolutely yes. The vaccine and the pandemic has certainly changed the way we're going to work going forward.
Yeah, and I'd absolutely right, and I would, you know, kind of say that, you know, for all the people listening, you know, make sure that cyber has a seat at the decision table. You know, you talk about IT modernization, you talk about expansion, you talk about digital transformation. Cybersecurity needs to be a part of that conversation because it's an enabler to those things. You know, not a road bump on the way to doing those things. You know, to do those things effectively and to do them for the long term, to truly enable, you know, this transformation, cyber has to be there and it has to be built in from the beginning. You know, during this time that businesses have been making this this adjustment, we've also seen, you know, ransomware numbers go through the roof. You know, we've seen, you know, the threat community really evolve as well. So they're evolving in parallel. They're changing their operations. They're always a step ahead. And so making sure cyber has a seat at the table, making sure the resources required to do things properly are included, and then making sure there's a sustainment tail. That's the big thing. You know, if you make an investment today, make sure you're prepared to make that investment or to modernize that investment for the next 3 to 5 years. I think that's really the key to kind of a resilient, sustainable transition.
Excellent. So here's my final lightning round question for each of the panelists in 15 seconds or less. You mentioned the new normal. In the new normal, looking ahead 5 years, what is the next big tech application that we need to secure?
For me, there isn't one big one. It is all of the ones that we've listed here today: blockchain, AI, IoT, automation, and robotics. They are all going to be leading the forefront when it comes to what the new normal looks like 5 years from now, in my humble opinion. And I'm not an IT expert. I just sort of look at the research from a logistics perspective, and those are all at the forefront of technological change.
Daniel, 15 seconds.
Yeah, I would say IoT and blockchain are definitely at the forefront of what's coming. And I would still say it's hard because you have to think at cybersecurity and all the as-a-service SaaS cloud platforms that are coming. So it will definitely be cloud security applied to those to those other technologies that Pina already mentioned.
Yeah, and I would just close by saying that unique to this environment, to the logistics, transportation, maritime environment, it's the addition of IoT and OT. So, The logic controllers, SCADA devices, single board computers, they use technology, software, firmware, operating systems, network protocols that are unique and that have a very, very low awareness and knowledge level within our IT, administrative community. And so we need to ramp up our ability to understand them and then understand what the secure configuration of those devices looks like.
Excellent. Well, I want to thank my guest panelists here. It's been a fantastic time working with you all, Pina, Daniel, and Kevin. For all our attendees here, please check out their websites. These companies are doing fantastic things in North America and abroad. So make sure that you spend some time doing that as well. I also want to thank Chango Tech for putting on this event, really giving us this opportunity as a supply chain and logistics industry to come together and talk through these different tech applications. And finally, I would give a very quick shout out to what appears our most active commenter, Johnny Walker. So Johnny Walker, congrats to you for most comments. And that's all we have today. Thank you from our panel.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. Well, thank you very much. Well, what is clear is that like most other industries, transportation and logistics currently confronting an immense change. And like all changes, they bring both risks and opportunities. New technologies, new market players, new customers' expectations, and new business models. There are many ways sectors can develop to meet these challenges, some evolutionary and others more revolutionary. I hope today we have provided a few ideas on what is going on. Globally, what has been said today, it happens in both sides of the Atlantic, I can tell you. We all have the same problems and challenges post-pandemic world. So thank you all for being here, speakers and attendees, and of course to my dear Andrea Soto for a great organization, illusion, and hard work done as to be able to carry out this first event in North America. Honestly, this is very exciting times for us as an organization. And finally, invite you all to attend our European LYT21 that will take place before the year end. And please, keep safe and have a nice day. Thank you very much to all.